Deku upended Uraraka's life with a single sentence.
Hold on, Shigaraki! I have a question too. What is All for One after?
This highly classified information of All for One existing being leaked had forced the governments to have to deal with Uraraka.
All for One ruled over Japan.
Isn't that all just made up? It's not mentioned in our textbooks.
As they easily saw Uraraka being open about what she heard to the investigators and how she wanted to warn her friends that one of the villain leaders is named All for One. Which, since at that time the very existence of All for One was not allowed under any circumstance to be disclosed to the general public, and especially since Uraraka stating she heard it from Deku, would lead to the plan to be hidden new symbol of peace getting a lot of extra scrutiny from people without a security clearance. They had to deal with Uraraka, which we can easily see they did, as Uraraka never mentioned what she heard from Deku, even when All for One announced its existence to the world. Since at the time they'd be looking to recruit talented heroes into their secret government operations, Uraraka, being a high-quality, in-training hero that already knew too much and her family had significant financial difficulties that can be exploited for the recruitment phase, they easily recruited Uraraka. But they were absolutely furious at Deku telling Uraraka, so they told Uraraka to never disclose who she has become to Deku, as he leaks too much classified information, so a severe danger to the secret agents. Therefore, to Deku, Uraraka was still Uraraka, but that was just an illusion. Uraraka then was placed under the veteran secret agent Froppy, who was recruited during an internship when Froppy played a massive role in saving extremely important cargo from villains, which a simple overview can easily reveal the cover-up and recruitment happening. As a reported motive, we don't know what was in that cargo at the time, would not warrant such a massive, large-scale, expensive response starting in the morning and going on through the night, with a large fleet composed of military and hero agency ships searching for them till they were found. Which, after they got the cargo back, they lied, saying it ended up just being unknown to them before drugs, which didn't match the resources brought in to find it. Then they praised Froppy, who saved the mission, and then said it will look forward to working with Froppy in the future. Which then they recruited her in secret. These are some of the stories of how the secret agent students in UA came to be. But prior to this event I am analyzing for this video, these stories felt more like an introductory period, with nothing much happening that strongly impacted the story. But I could see something was building up. But now in this event, the main storyline is starting. And as I expected, it will be a dark story that will secretly haunt Deku for a long time to come. Which this was due to the planned secret agent student operation went wrong. The secret agent student operation was before an attempt to recruit the many talented heroes from within the hero schools into the government secret operations, instead of having them just have normal hero careers. But for Class 1A, when an unexpected massive villain threat appeared, threatening the life of the next symbol of peace, it was readjusted to instead create a force of students that would be trained to immediately coordinate attacks and defenses with Deku. So Deku would not have to deal with the many problems of not being able to admit anything to the ones he is surrounded by, when Deku needs to fight alongside Class 1A. But mistakes such as with Uraraka, plus the many other mistakes Deku and his original Quirk had done, kept the secret agent student operation from making contact with Deku, leaving a powerful, but at the same time vulnerable set of student secret agents, with the secret agent student operation force created from Class 1A not having the intended command structure and intel. This had left those secret agent students without an understanding of how things were supposed to work. Therefore, they were unable to make sense of the malicious orders that started to arrive during this event. All Deku saw was the look of despair and distress on Uraraka. With how many things went wrong, Uraraka couldn't figure out that her command structure just got compromised. Making the orders she will receive from now on to help Deku would be actually meant to harm and kill Deku. And from this video, it will be safe to assume Uraraka, though she wants and tries to help Deku, Uraraka will be shown to clearly have a strong potential to be counted as one of the people that cause the most pain in Deku's life. If you do want a more detailed review of these secret agent stories' origins, please review episode 8 of my series. Also, I will be analyzing Deku's version of Quirk involvement alongside the secret agent's main storyline, as it is normally done in the series that is mainly focused on Deku's version of Quirk. This will contain spoilers for the My Hero Academia series. This is your final spoiler warning. We now start when the sudden buildup of references to the secret agents signaling the will be happening soon start of the main storyline. By skipping a bit ahead in the timeline to when the UA students were in front of the dorms after the Camino Ward incident, with Aizawa about to discipline them for the rogue actions that part of Class 1A took during the Camino Ward incident. We can see the secret agents Froppy and Uraraka proudly in front, ready to take the consequences of failing to keep the actions of the class legal as they were ordered to do so. But we also see Ashido right next to them. During episode 8 of my series, I did state that a scene indicated that Ashido may in fact be a secret agent as well, but I said it wasn't strong enough proof. With her standing in such a suspicious spot, we do have our first physical sign that would align with Ashido being a secret agent. Also, there was another reference to them taking the responsibility for their failures. By the moment Aizawa finished stating what the rogue and training heroes did, the camera showed the secret agents.
You 5 are the ones who broke the rules and went to rescue Bakugo that night.
Which could symbolize the extra responsibility those students had to stop the incident in the first place. After this, during the time Aizawa was showing the students around the dorms, a seemed to be one-off joke with Uraraka falling over in shock, saying the dorm room was as big as her house, happened.
It's the size of my house!
Uraraka!
Which, with Uraraka being bribed heavily to improve her family barely holding together finances as part of her recruitment, we can now expect any mentioning of Uraraka's financial state could suddenly reveal a lot of answers, which this one does. But in this unusual case, we see the answers come from the girls' ending theme of My Hero Academia. We can see Uraraka in her house as she has her shoes off with her own bed as it'd be too small for her parents. We can also see the decorations would match Uraraka's room, with seeing some pink on Uraraka's bed as it is a girl's room and some of the star charts she placed in her dorm room. Plus it is structurally different than a dorm room, so this has to be her parents' house, as Uraraka wouldn't have had another place she lived in. Which, if true, Uraraka's parents' house would not have had a room of this size solely for Uraraka. Which conflicts with the dorm room being as big as her house. But also, the normally upbeat Uraraka, who shouldn't be that troubled looking, would be surrounded by all the end results of those bribes she took, making it she can't just simply leave due to she signed her freedom away for her family's well-being and hero prospects. Which this also could reflect of being trapped in a will inevitably become a dark profession. Now these endings and intros have been shown in the past through other people's research, actually explaining the story of My Hero Academia in cryptic ways. So since we found a direct reference to Uraraka being a secret agent in one, we are going to dig through it to find out the rest of the message. Which I found the entire ending theme was actually focused on the secret agents, specifically Uraraka's point of view of it, which after we go through it, I will summarize what was said. First part focused on Uraraka with an easy introductory main subject, which was she reached out her hand, grasping forward, that has been symbolized a lot for grabbing hold of her future. So that is a subject which aligns pretty well with the first scene that was analyzed talking about major factors in Uraraka's life. After that, we see all the female Class 1A students lying in a circle, which we see only Ashido and Froppy looking directly at Uraraka, Since they are the two other secret agents, they probably were supporting Uraraka as she was not as emotionally ready for what she has become. So them both staring at her symbolizes the support they give Uraraka throughout her secret agent career. Next scene does the same thing, but in a far more violent scenario, with both Ashido and Froppy staring at Uraraka, probably symbolizing they support Uraraka in intense situations, and previous one would now be representing the peaceful times. They are supporting her as well. Next scene, it looks to be symbolizing the secret agents will be able to live normal lives, as they, without looking at each other, are in a public area. The next scene shows a group of Class 1A females staring back with concern, which will be shown to be Uraraka's house, showing they understood Uraraka was a stress, which Uraraka is then shown being surrounded by the things she got from all the bribes that had locked her into being a secret agent. Unlike all the other secret agents who were more free, which troubled Uraraka greatly. Also, it will be revealed there are many more brutal consequences for Uraraka's career path that will gravely distress her, probably much more than both Ashido and Froppy combined in the future, which will be shown later in this video. Next, the symbolism of light shining on Uraraka as she's in a room, with Uraraka noticing it, symbolizing Uraraka will find a bright path forward despite the problems with becoming a secret agent. Next scene has the female students in normal hero training without staring at each other at a UA, symbolizing the secret agents will be able to pursue normal hero careers, which had worked with the image from before that symbolized the secret agents will be able to live normal lives, despite being secret agents. Next scene, Class 1A are running along a road competing in a race, which symbolized them competing in those shared pursuits in life, which is being heroes. Then shows Froppy, Ashido, and Uraraka all happy together, therefore symbolizing the secret agents will be happy in the future together, pursuing being heroes in a life. Then last scene, the three secret agents had outpaced all others, running toward the horizon, showing how their secret agent status will allow them to go farther than all the non-secret agents in the hero career paths. We clearly see all the components are pretty much aligned with the message, mainly focused on Uraraka's secret agent career, so here is my summary of this message to make it clear if I lost any of you. Uraraka will grasp the future by pursuing her secret agent career successfully. Her secret agent friends Froppy and Ashido will be with Uraraka together, supporting her during the secret agent careers. They will be with Uraraka through peaceful and violent times. They will be allowed to fully enjoy being pro-heroes and being in the civilian world, while at the same time being secret agents. They are all aware that Uraraka is distressed by how she got locked in by taking bribes to get a family out of financial difficulty as part of her recruitment and other things that come with the dark missions they are given. But there is a bright future for Uraraka that she will eventually see. As all the students pursue their future hero careers, these secret agents will be happy together and go farther than all the other classmates in UA due to the inherent access to so much more that secret agent career paths provide. So we can at least confirm in the end the ending won't be bad for them, and they will be secret agents throughout their hero careers. With this data, we can now conclude that Ashido is a secret agent, but it's clear Ashido is being completely kept separate from all the other secret agents, with all her training and missions being completely separate from Froppy and Uraraka, and basically seems to be undetectable. Therefore, she's on a special assignment. Looking at the data I have seen, I think Ashido was there to be the government's ace in the hole against Deku's original Quirk. It is known that once Deku's original Quirk makes a plan, it stubbornly pursues it with no morals. So Froppy and Uraraka, who are known by Deku's original Quirk, would, if they try to oppose it, get pushed aside by the omnipotent intel gathering and the power of one for all it wields. Therefore, the governments knew they needed something special to restrain Deku's original Quirk if it goes rogue, which a person that is specifically trained to prevent the scanning from noticing any sign she's a secret agent would deal with the biggest threat, which is Deku's original Quirk, actively targeting them, which would explain Ashido's secret agent actions being missing from the story, as whatever she did as a secret agent was kept away from Deku, the one who wrote the story we are viewing according to my Future Deku Narration Theory, which explains why Ashido's secret agent story looks to have mostly not been written down. But what sets Ashido apart from anyone else they could have chosen to blindside Deku's original Quirk is that her acid attacks will quickly bust through any barrier, destroy anything that is causing issues, and technically even able to cripple Deku, with Deku's original Quirk not expecting her to douse the plans it has in acid, so it wouldn't have its guard up. But of course for as needed basis, which means Ashido might not be activated or just do small adjustments, while Ashido fulfilled the requirement to have an ace in the hole readily available and to keep Deku's original Quirk in line for a as needed basis. But that does also mean Ashido would need to know what she was hiding from, which means they did tell Ashido about Deku's original Quirk, and potentially a lot more due to there is a lot more happening around Deku besides his original Quirk, so to navigate it, Ashido would have to be told a lot. And since Ashido was already told one of the most consequential, closely guarded secrets, which was the existence of Deku's original Quirk, while one of her jobs includes fighting and beating the one-for-all wielder for a as-needed basis, with that I don't see any significant strategic reason to not tell Ashido the rest. Regardless of how much they told Ashido, Ashido is clearly a powerful sleeper agent, awaiting the moment she is given orders. Now that we have noted the true purpose of why Ashido was brought in, we do note that Froppy is completely missing purpose in the story up until the new secret agent Uraraka became Froppy's responsibility. But I believe we have enough evidence to figure out what Froppy's true purpose was, as Ashido only covered one important aspect of dealing with Deku's original Quirk, going rogue, which is stopping it after it went rogue. But they were missing the far easier option, preventing it from going rogue. If Froppy was presented to Deku as a secret agent and stated to be the go-to person to receive intel, as the enemies wouldn't be as focused on Froppy, therefore easier to communicate secret information to, with other strong reasons. Every time a situation would happen, if they conditioned Deku to seek out Froppy for information, Froppy would be able to give Deku orders and information that would form the desires that triggers Deku's original Quirk, and even insert new desires into an already malfunctioning plan to correct it to a large extent. Also, Deku's original Quirk could easily be made to seek out Froppy as well during intense situations. They can communicate to Froppy the information in a way scans can't pick it up, which would exploit Deku's original Quirk's normal behavior of seeking out the both best and at the same time most efficient ways to get resources, which Froppy would look like a constant goldmine of information to Deku's original Quirk. And also exploit the social phobia with how Deku's original Quirk won't tell Deku directly anything he can't consciously know, which seeing Froppy with that information would have it force Deku to find a way to Froppy quickly during situations so that Deku can become consciously aware of the valuable intel. This clearly would have been a great safeguard against most of the potential major malfunctions during important operations. Which also, they didn't need to have Froppy know of Deku's original Quirk, as long as they keep Froppy up to date with mission critical intel, as they do prefer to minimize the amount of people that know of Deku's original Quirk, which was due to the critical weakness it has that could be exploited to kill Deku. So they would have preferred if Froppy didn't know. Now that we know Ashido is a secret agent, we look for when it happened. The issue is that she had successfully hid when it happened for Future Deku, along with most of everything else so far. But we do have strong evidence on the exact period of time it happened, despite the event not being shown. The earliest point would be after the UA Sports Festival, as that is the point the heroes found out about Deku's original Quirk, therefore the point they realized the need to create secret agent students, to attempt to contain this unexpected issue, which was due to Deku's original Quirk, not subtle strategy of forcing Deku to carry a heavy metal slab over a mile of rope for the minefield he did not know about, which he should have dropped it due to the sheer effort to carry it over a mile of rope for a completely hidden from Deku advantage. And then having Deku jump on a pile of mines to launch himself with the middle slab to hit the moving target Todoroki and Bakugo, which if he landed in front or behind, Deku would have been blasted away by them. Which requires seeing acrobatics that without that hitting original quirk, Deku should have been incapable of. Which otherwise, Deku would have probably landed nowhere near where he needed to go, as Deku would be flung somewhere away from the race track. Which if you want a detailed review of what Deku's original quirk did at the UA Sports Festival, please review episode 5 of my series. Now getting back to the review of the event, after the UA Sports Festival, the heroes started to look for ways to contain that unexpected problem, as they hadn't only cleared Deku to use One For All, not some unvetted living quirk making decisions on how One For All would be used. Which as expected, we see the recruitment of students start up during the next major event, when Froppy got scouted for recruitment during the internships. Which since Froppy's job was to stop Deku's original quirk from going rogue, they probably were seeking Ashido at the same time, who covered the other important aspect of containing Deku's original quirk, to stop it after it goes rogue. And since Ashido is specifically handled in a way Deku's original quirk wouldn't notice, that would explain why Ashido's story of her internship was completely missing, despite there was a montage of what Class 1A went through during the internships. Due to Ashido needed to be handled in a hidden way, while Froppy was meant to be seen by Deku's original quirk. Which explains why Froppy's story took almost an entire episode, while not even a second was devoted to Ashido's. The internships would also have the best conditions by far, as the potential recruits were all outside of scanning range of Deku's original quirk for an extended period of time, and each student was isolated from each other, so it'd be easier to prevent any potential leak of information on what was happening when they revealed themselves to their chosen students. Which if they didn't do it, then the students would have returned to UA, which would have been scanned constantly, and have rumors spread easily of the recruitment of the students. So the by far earliest point in time it'd be even practical to move forward with recruitment was the internships. Therefore, due to all the previous stated reasons, it had to have happened at the internships. There also is another point that comes from the previous videos that had shown they were interested in recruiting Todoroki when Todoroki was rejecting his father Endevour. But when they went forward with the recruitment during the internships, Todoroki had just started working with his father again. Which Endeavour being the number 2 hero would be something you do not oppose directly unless you want your entire operation torn apart. Which explains when Todoroki isolated himself from Endeavour, they showed interest in Todoroki. But when Todoroki went back to Endeavour, they stopped. We can probably assume they replaced Todoroki with Froppy for the plans due to that complication. Which Todoroki would have been a far more powerful in every single way compared to Froppy. As Todoroki is basically not just a future top tier hero, but he is probably should be considered the next top tier hero, far above all others in his abilities. Which we can see, the original choices that were Ashido and Todoroki would have been absolute powerhouses, able to directly just get the job done. They also be the most likely to handle any changes that occur to their jobs due to the sheer power they have as well. So it is clear why they were at the front of the list. But feasibility of recruitment went into Froppy's favor by far, having Froppy instead given the job intended for Todoroki. Plus needing to silence Froppy, who saw those inconsistencies with the cover-up of the naval mission, true objective. Which made Froppy needed to be handled quickly, and then due to they had a position that needed to be filled immediately, they gave it to Froppy, who was available and was not being utilized for any other task. Then they of course both be trained for some time to get them up to speed on how to handle their respective jobs properly, but during that time Deku lost his security clearance completely. First, through Deku's improper behavior had slowed the process down considerably to get those secret agent allies, making them decide to delay it as they try to figure out if it'd be a good idea to work with Deku. Then Deku mishandled classified information, went rogue even more, and his original quirk misbehaved even more, having the plan for the secret agent students to be linked up with Deku suspended indefinitely. So that was probably the true storyline. But there was one more important part. the reason why Todoroki went back to Endeavour was all due to Deku's original quirk, as Deku got the desire to help Todoroki, which then Deku's original quirk malfunctioned, forcing Deku to remain in the arena in a UA Sports Festival, which had Deku not strike Todoroki down to instead convince Todoroki to use his fire part of his quirk that Todoroki was rejecting due to Todoroki's hatred of his father Endeavour. This action had permanently scarred Deku for life, and more importantly, accidentally removed Todoroki from the secret agent career path, which was a massive loss, which if you want a full detailed review of the fight, please review episode 5 of my series. Looking at how the secret agent operations were far too scared of the danger of Deku to move forward with their plans, having Froppy replaced by Todoroki would have completely changed the outcome. As that is Todoroki, the probably will be the #1 hero in the future. Todoroki is known to not laugh, but any problems Deku and his original quirk might cause for Todoroki might have Todoroki crack a smile seeing the futile efforts to harm him. Ashido's reaction would be no different, as she is a powerhouse, plus is in a very defensible spot for being told to keep her distance. And the leaders would have seen this as well, probably making them strongly consider moving forward with the secret agent plans due to the operation's resilience. Plus they get even an extra one, Froppy, as she was primarily brought in due to unrelated circumstances. But having Froppy replacing Todoroki had drastically undercut the operation's resilience, having them not take the risk. If this change did occur, then the Hosu incident would have been changed drastically, as Todoroki being there was due to he went back to Endeavour, which Todoroki on the surface seemed to play a key role in saving Ida's life and capturing Stain. But actually Todoroki was not the main reason Ida was saved. Todoroki showing up was all due to Deku's original quirk, that had plenty of time to go around gathering resources prior to engaging Stain, which during that Deku's original quirk decided to gather Todoroki from among the many resources it could have chosen from, as Todoroki was powerful enough and able to be gathered quickest. But since Deku's original quirk had kept Deku on standby, waiting for the last second to come in to save Ida, to run down the clock on how long the paralysis would keep Ida down, Deku's original quirk had time to go for the other resources. Which we can see Deku's path in that incident had plenty of delays that could have been cut out to devote time to gathering other resources. Deku had a cell phone which, instead of the nondescript GPS location that was sent in the main timeline, Deku would have sent all types of different forms of communications to make the resources prioritize Stain. Even a widespread social media message telling the entire world to send help, with also having enough time to place his cell phone down for a live stream, at a good camera angle, and had time to directly interact with ones out there. So without Todoroki, there still would have been a significant chance Ida would have lived. Though Deku had won the battle to help Todoroki accept his powers, if Deku keeps winning battles like this, he probably will lose the war. Looking at how Todoroki was so heavily tied to such an important factor, the #2 hero Endeavour, any direct messing with such a powerful force would normally be considered very dangerous, due to the obvious chain reaction of unintended consequences. But Deku's original quirk didn't care, nor had the capability to care, blindly diving at them the moment Deku's desires set off a plan to mess with the Endeavour situation. Deku's original quirk of course didn't intend to cause harm, but its nature of blindly messing with extremely powerful things it has no business getting involved with is by itself dangerous, and such behavior would obviously have a high chance to cause unintended consequences, so when those consequences do occur, it basically should be blamed. And is even worse, as the sheer damage it did to Deku to help Todoroki had probably terrified the people that were considering bringing Deku into the secret agent operations, which this excessive mutilation of Deku for insane reasons would have strongly contributed to Deku not getting the secret agent allies, as they worry what else they would be willing to do to everything that they consider as tools for its plans, which includes Deku's allies and its civilians around Deku. Next scene, we had a suspicious event with Froppy emotionally confronting the rogue heroes from Camino Ward, which Froppy crying, saying nonsensical statements which were she doesn't deserve to be their friends, and she failed to stop them from going rogue in Camino Ward. And with Uraraka, the new secret agent, supporting the nonsensical presentation just adds it was even more suspicious. So let's dig out what Froppy was actually saying. It does start with a predictable introduction that secret agents would do, as Froppy says she always says what is on her mind, saying she's truthful, which is just the nature of the business. She's in to lie about being honest.
You guys know I'm pretty straightforward and always speak what's on my mind.
I was clearly trying to gain favor with a manipulation of them for a goal. Froppy then talked about how they didn't listen to her about going rogue to save Bakugo, saying herself was worthless during that situation.
Despite my warning, you still went and saved Bakugo. Turns out I was worthless.
Which Froppy was specifically ordered to keep Class 1A and herself from trying to do illegal actions in this intense time, but during this, Froppy said she wasn't told until this morning what they did.
You still went and saved Bakugo. I didn't know that until this morning.
Which means despite her failure to keep the rogue actions during a major event from happening, Froppy not being told by her secret agent higher-ups for days is a sign of extreme disappointment, as they did not keep her in a loop on important tasks Froppy had, which is a scary warning sign for Froppy's continued involvement as a secret agent. Having your bosses not happy with you, so much so that they stopped communicating with you. With that, Froppy said she didn't feel she deserved to joke around and be with them as usual. With a view, her bosses are indicating they believe she's a failure.
I didn't think I deserved to joke around and have fun with everyone like usual.
But it wasn't just that, as when Toga revealed to Uraraka that she was a secret agent, by giving Uraraka the code word to let Toga go, which was seen on episode 10 of my series at the timestamp 33 minutes and 24 seconds, and then you can see the step-by-step breakdown of Toga killing and replacing the blood-draining killer at timestamp 42 minutes and 58 seconds, which can be found by actually investigating the blood locations in this image on screen, to see how such a crime scene would form. If you want a hint, please note that the amount of blood on the wall indicates a major wound on this person's back that should have soaked this person's white shirt as Toga walked away celebrating, but it didn't. If you want my analysis on how this shows Toga copied the blood-draining mass murderer Quirk and used it against him, please check out the before-mentioned timestamp that is currently on screen of my series. This revealing of Toga's secret identity was due to the mission in the summer training camp to be unknowingly the victims of Toga, so the fear would look real, while at the same time, Toga wasn't actually allowed to harm them significantly, which was done to have the villains fully accept Toga into the ranks. But during this, Toga was forced to let Uraraka capture her to buy time for the hero reinforcements to arrive, to avoid needing to finish off Uraraka and Froppy, who at that point lost way too quickly against Toga. Which once Uraraka captured Toga, Toga would then be forced to, once the hero reinforcements arrived, to tell Uraraka the truth to let her go with a code word. But Froppy wasn't told, as she did not have a need to know due to she played no part in actually letting Toga go. Which instead, Froppy was able to see suddenly her supposedly new recruit she is mentoring is somehow showing clear signs she is hiding top secret classified information from Froppy, as if Froppy was not the go-to senior secret agent anymore. This mistake was due to a recent event that occurred, which Ashido was supposed to be there instead of Uraraka, as Ashido would have obviously held Toga off for a long enough time for that short time that battle was planned for. But they are students, and Ashido had unfortunately failed the final exam, having her sent away with a remedial class, which was due to the hero side wanting to make the trap look as inviting as possible for the villains, by reducing the amount of unneeded to be their students, to make them look as vulnerable as possible, so sent the ones who failed the final exam away, which unfortunately took Ashido out of the equation, and she left with the remedial class, having Uraraka sent with Froppy instead, which made Toga's playing around attacks to buy time for the hero reinforcements to arrive end up overwhelming them. Which, since Toga would have replaced many people perfectly infiltrating everywhere on behalf of the higher-ups, the governments couldn't afford such a powerful ace in the hole to get exposed, as everyone thought the quirks available would be able to make a perfect combination to detect almost all double agents, without realizing there was at least one quirk user, Toga, that can bypass all the defenses, giving society unprecedented access to the enemies that had to guard down against the unknown to them threat. So Froppy wasn't told that she did not have a need to know for such critical intel, unlike Uraraka. On top of adding in Froppy was not told the classified information, Ashido was told about Deku's original quirk, and clearly having Ashido on a special assignment, as if she also is trusted more than Froppy. And with how Ashido and Froppy were supposed to be on a joint mission to contain Deku's original quirk, but suddenly they had to remove Froppy due to Deku's mistakes. This would have left Froppy with no real explanation on why she was let go or any real purpose in general, which would easily lead Froppy to reach her own conclusions on why they are pushing her aside. Froppy would at this point easily reach a conclusion she could be getting fired, and she was so desperate to not let that happen, as being a secret agent meant so much to her. With Froppy burst into tears with how scared she was of losing it all, especially as they swore to not go rogue again, showing a brush of relief as well, which was emotionally too much for Froppy, so she burst into tears. Though from what I've seen, I think the end of the major operation to get All for One disrupted communications to Froppy, and the top secret information Uraraka has on Toga had further confused Froppy, having her incorrectly assume her career as a secret agent was in danger when it actually was not. After this, one more important event is touched upon before the licensing exam. We can see that despite everything Uraraka went through with being a secret agent, and being told to separate herself from Deku, in regard to her secret agent duties, due to Deku had leaked classified information repeatedly, Uraraka's body was resisting with the strong love emotions that came out. But during this, we can see Uraraka deciding to reject Deku for her secret agent responsibilities, fighting back against the strong love emotions she feels. The girls of UA were trying to get Uraraka to tell her who she has a crush on, which Froppy being the only one briefed on why Uraraka was recruited, due to Froppy was given the responsibility to look after and train a new recruit. Had Froppy understand the true predicament Uraraka just got into, so Froppy told them to leave the extremely flustered Uraraka alone.
It's not good to force an investigation.
She's right. More importantly, it's late.
Then Uraraka, as she was floating, saw Deku through the window. At that point, she calmed down and in a very different emotional state, which seems more determined with other emotions not related to her falling over Deku. Uraraka, seeing the love path, said, "That's not it."
That's not it.
Which was referring to that isn't the path she is going down. Even so, they easily could have started dating with Deku ready to say yes. Uraraka knew, as a secret agent, it probably won't ever happen, as she is not allowed to reveal to Deku who she truly is due to his incompetent leaking of information. Therefore, it made this potential relationship far too complicated to ever happen, from her point of view at that point in time, which the music reflected the hidden conflict by still presenting the full-blown love music, but Uraraka, consciously in an entirely different tone, rejected it.
That's not it.
Therefore, both were showing a different view of the same situation. The recruitment of Uraraka into a secret agent was a turning point in the potential future love with Deku, as they furiously told Uraraka not to let Deku know anything about what she was doing as a secret agent, which her feeling for Deku would probably push her to ask, "But does that mean I can still date him?" Which Uraraka's logic would probably have resisted her from even asking that question. Regardless of if Uraraka asked or not, she knows the answer would be a hard no. Though there is still time for this dynamic between Uraraka and Deku to change, it doesn't look good for now. You can clearly see Uraraka was ready to just go for it, and they would have started dating at this point if they hadn't already. But the secret agent operation is keeping them separate for now. Now, next scene, they finally arrive at the licensing exam, which is the event the secret agent's main storyline will start in, which we will follow Deku and his original quirk, that will soon face the consequences of their careless actions. As we see Class 1A arrive with many other students from the other schools, Toga was among them disguised as a student. She secretly replaced from Zuketsu High, which Toga came up to Deku. It is clear that as Deku's original Quirk would be scanning the competition, would have noticed Toga as she got close to him. But at this point, Deku's original Quirk knew she was a double agent, working for the hero, so in no way made a move to mess with Toga, and didn't put Deku's guard up around her as it would decide to help Toga if it could. But Deku's original Quirk didn't see any indications on why Toga was there at that point in time, and without incident, they eventually started the licensing exam. For a required overview of round 1 of the exam, to understand the rules, the objective to win was by being one of the first 100 to eliminate 2 other competitors, by hitting the final one of the 3 targets of them. With the balls, they were given with no limit on tactics when within the designated exam area. At the start, Class 1A was heavily targeted by other schools due to the UA Sports Festival showing off the weaknesses to the world, as they competed in the UA Sports Festival. Therefore, they were at a clear disadvantage, making them tempting targets, which, unknown to them, UA High is often targeted as these exams, making it sort of a tradition for them, which allowed to give students more experience, didn't tell them of it, so they can be more used to crisis situations. But Deku's original Quirk looked around, seeing massive amount of voices talking about taking out UA High, heading to them. So Deku's original Quirk used mental manipulation to bring relevant data about the threat to front of Deku's mind, to have him piece together the information to make him realize the threat that was approaching. Especially since it is unlikely that would have happened otherwise, as Deku had hours before to figure that out, but the last minute before the attack happened means it was mental manipulation, especially since the scannable data was far more readily available with their enemies actively trying to pursue them. In response, 4 of the Class 1A students ignored Deku's efforts to stick together to prepare for the attack, while the rest stayed. At this point, Deku's original Quirk looked for a defensible spot for the upcoming attack. Through having Deku use his reputation and confidence to take the lead of the group, moving them around, prior to the attack to get to a good spot to defend, but it wasn't able to find it in time an underprepared enemy group to exploit. Which should not come as a surprise due to the groups charging at them with the intel they had on UA would have the ones that attacked UA would be able to understand if it'd be a good idea, so none of those being far too overconfident victims would be around. Under those conditions, eventually they were attacked. But they were expecting it and were in a defensible position, leading to a stalemate with no one able to get an advantage, even with Deku's original Quirk efforts, that led to eventually the enemies deciding to separate the group of UA High students with a massive attack called Maximum Force Tremoring Earth, that sent Class 1A far away all over the place, randomly. Deku's original Quirk saw the attack coming, but as stated before, they were in a stalemate, unable to hit the enemies effectively, and couldn't afford using one of the high-powered one-for-all attacks as Deku would not be allowed to receive medical attention for the physical backlash during the rest of the exam. So Deku's original Quirk, unable to stop the attack, braced for impact. Deku's original Quirk knew what the attack would be, but it couldn't effectively scan the attack as it happened due to the sheer data coming off the massive amount of ground and rocks breaking up flying at him, which has been shown before in a much smaller scale. It wasn't able to scan a sudden breakup of the environment around it, quick enough to do anything about it. So it would have been impossible to scan this time as well. And then the options when flying through the air were limited as well due to it being a bad idea to use powerful attacks, damaging Deku, to change his trajectory, but it was able to see how to make Deku land safely at least. Deku at this point found himself uninjured and alone, which this was the perfect environment for Deku's original Quirk. It would scan every ability, every conversation, position, and movement of any enemy, able to mentally manipulate Deku to make the best choices, evading perfectly, and even move fast with the sheer amount of openings it would have exploited. But unfortunately for Deku, his original Quirk saw the disguised Toga heading to Deku, and since due to Deku's original Quirk considers Toga an ally, it would not hide from Toga. With the place also being isolated, probably expected Toga wanted a secret meeting with Deku. So when Toga spotted and snuck up on Deku, he didn't see any problem with this, even having Deku slow down to have the meeting, since Deku's original quirk knew Toga didn't know the scanning quirk. Deku's original quirk didn't give Deku any advantage from the scanning to keep the environment as close to what Toga expects it to be, to not disrupt the considered to be an analyzed plan. But then, to the absolute surprise of Deku's original quirk, Toga ambushed Deku, hitting one of the 3 targets of Deku. During this fight, Toga did say a lot to Deku, but they were interrupted many times during this, and clearly the conversation was cut short, which makes it that I had to separate what she says from the battle section, as what Toga says will take a lot of work to unravel. Therefore, to avoid a jumbled mess, I'm separating them into their own sections. So for now, I will start with the simpler one, just analyzing a battle between Deku and Toga. We can see Deku's original quirk get on high alert, activating a plan to now guard the remaining 2 targets on Deku from Toga, as she gave Deku's original quirk enough time to activate by talking instead of fighting immediately.
You sure like to talk.
But it still wanted to hear what Toga wanted to say, as it didn't want to interfere with a secret agent ally. But Toga eventually initiated attacks, which in response, Deku's original quirk would not try to strike Toga down, but it still have Deku fight back, to not have disrupt Toga's plans, that clearly wanted a fight. During the exchange of attacks, Toga again went for Deku's targets, but this time, Deku's original quirk scanned the attack coming in and blocked it. But after a short amount of fighting, Deku lost track of Toga, which was due to Deku's original quirk knew Toga did not know of Deku's original quirk use of scanning to track her. Therefore, using the scanning to track Toga would have disrupted a secret agent ally plan, which Deku's original quirk wanted to avoid that. So Deku's original quirk allowed Toga to sneak up on Deku as long as Toga doesn't go for Deku's 2 remaining targets. At this point, Toga tackled Deku to the ground, restraining him, but during this entire time, Deku's original quirk was just allowing it, as it saw none of Toga's attacks had been aimed at Deku's targets. And also, since we see Deku easily throw Toga off him later on, Toga didn't actually have Deku restrained, she was just being tricked, so she can calmly tell Deku what she wanted to say unless she tried again to go for another one of the targets on Deku. Which is a common tactic of Deku's original quirk, letting Deku seem to be down when he wasn't, to wait for the perfect opportunity to strike. But this time was to let Toga talk. But as they were fighting, not hiding, the enemies' contestants were closing in on them as they were being searched for. And this fight had kept them in the open, so easily spotted. The enemies did notice them, then attempted an ambush, which Deku's original quirk saw coming. But Deku's original quirk wanted to let Toga talk as long as possible, so she can get to the point. Therefore waited till the last second to dodge. Then when it was time, Deku's original quirk powered up Deku, throwing Toga away to safety, and also having Deku's dodge as well, which gave them both enough time to get back up to be ready for when the enemies start to attack. After this, Toga disengaged, evading them, then transformed into Uraraka, while Deku was instead prioritized by the enemies, forcing Deku, who had already scanned the enemies, to evade the attacks, which has a scanning quirk wielder with physical manipulation to make him move perfectly, and mental manipulation to have Deku to be able to sort through the many attacks to prioritize them properly, and full cowling having Deku be a fast target moving everywhere, including jumping extremely high, had Deku evade perfectly, being a nearly impossible to hit target. During this battle, Toga ran over disguised as Uraraka, telling Deku to come with her, which was Toga trying to isolate Deku again with herself to continue what she was doing before to Deku. And being so confident had the fake Uraraka would seem like she had a plan, so better to trust her and leave with her. But this time, Deku's original quirk was on guard, as it now suspected Toga may actually be an enemy. So it would not allow Deku to have his guard down any longer around Toga, for at least the rest of this event. But it still wants to know why Toga actually approached Deku, so it allowed, or with mental manipulation, made Deku realize the flaws in the fake Uraraka act, as a fake Uraraka exposed herself to the enemy's attack with no plan, as a bad position had her unexpectedly fall down the cliff and not using her floating powers to save herself. But Deku's original quirk would force or allow Deku to save her, as Deku's original quirk knew it'd be a massive loss if Toga dies. We see the many flashes of memory of Deku quickly thinking about all the times he didn't rush in time to save someone, having Deku motivated to help the imposter in need, which is a tactic that Deku's original quirk has used to mentally manipulate Deku before, though this may have been a natural response this time. Either way, Deku saved a fake Uraraka, and with the scanning physical manipulation, mental manipulation, full cowling, and now an extremely powerful one-for-all attack, which shows Deku's original quirk getting better at regulating the powers of One For All, and a scan for effectiveness of Deku's new hero gear that reduces injury, which it took the risk to make a mad dash to get away with Toga, fighting past anything in Deku's way, instead of before when Deku's original quirk was not certain if it'd be a good idea with the enemy's ability to pick him off if he tried to run, instead of being in a defensible posture and not turning his back to the enemies. Looking at how Toga, when being carried by Deku, was looking at him, as Deku just saved her, though you could try to argue the look that she was giving Deku was an act, the prolonged emotional stare does reflect someone who is not a psycho. It'd be more in line with a person that appreciates Deku and has a far different mindset than a psycho killer, which probably was a slip-up, letting her true emotions out as she just experienced a shock with her life being in danger. Which after a while Toga got her composure back to hide her true nature behind a fake psycho persona. After they got away, Deku's original quirk allowed Toga, disguised as Uraraka, to be with him in a hidden area. But this time Deku's original quirk has had enough of Toga's behavior. So it positioned Deku to have if Toga strikes again significantly, Toga will be forced to leave. By having them positioned where the real Uraraka and another ally would instantly see them if Deku walked a short distance out of the cover, that would expose Toga even if Toga tried to keep up a Uraraka act, as a real one would see right through it. But since Deku's original quirk still wanted to hear what Toga had to say, it allowed them to stay together for now. But as they were hiding together with Deku having his back to Toga, but at the same time scanning Toga's every action, Toga again tried to sneakily hit another of Deku's targets. But even so, her move was out of the view of Deku with no sound or sign of the attack. Deku's original quirk decided to ignore those inconsistencies in how it usually tries to hide all signs it is there, and instead immediately had Deku swing back, blocking the attack. It used mental manipulation to have Deku notice a fake sign orchestrated by Deku's original quirk. This attack disarmed Toga. With that, Deku's original quirk was still confident he can hold Toga back, so allowed Toga to continue speaking by remaining hidden from his allies in a hiding spot. Deku told the fake Uraraka he knows she is fake and to tell him what she wanted to say. In response with again not getting to the point, Toga transformed back into the original person she took the place of, but this time naked, while saying a sexual joke, and then attacked, scratching Deku's face. With that response from Toga, Deku's original quirk has had enough, and it decided to end it having Deku jump out into the open, which his allies immediately saw Deku and the attacker. And Deku's allies immediately attacked, separating them, and forced Toga to retreat. With Toga retreating, we can hear Toga say she wanted to talk to Deku more, but not with anyone else around, and cryptically saying the important meeting was ended early.
I really wanted to talk to you some more, but not with so many people around.
Then Toga looked at Uraraka, the one who knows her secret identity, which, at this point in time, we can see the expected to be the significant differences in the intel Toga had on Uraraka between the first meeting and now. As before in the summer training camp attack, Toga only uses a single part of Uraraka's name, but now uses her full name,
Ochako Uraraka,
which is a side effect of Toga's required research into everything about Uraraka, the person that knows Toga's secret identity. And after that, Toga left. At that point, Deku's original quirk was not going to allow another meeting, so it labeled Toga in the scanning as someone that should be avoided, which with scanning, having Deku's original quirk know how to hide from ones it wants to avoid, would make it impossible for Toga to find Deku again once she left. Then Deku continued to hunt for enemies so they can pass a test. Now it is time to analyze what was Toga attempting to do by analyzing what she said and what she demonstrated with her actions. Later on, it will be revealed that Toga was ordered by the League of Villains to get some of Deku's blood for them. But with such a long and on the surface looks to be completely insane interaction, there is plenty of openings for a different objective to be there. So we'll be looking for that one as well. Due to Toga does give some long-winded answers that can easily get hit with copyright with how my channel can't go anywhere close to 10 seconds for audio I use before they do that, I'll be giving some small pieces of the examples of audio that reflect their entire conversation. Now I do want to point out her being interrupted over and over again while also not getting to the point and then ending the conversation early has damaged the data we got from Toga in this event. But due to this being in retelling events by Future Deku, he should have figured it out, then placed it in this part of his retelling of the story. Which I found this to be Toga trying to recruit Deku into a secret radical hero group. First off, we do see Toga discuss with Deku the extremely effective training that Toga's group has to offer. From mental control, stealth, and demonstrated combat skills by Toga beating Deku around, but not finishing him off outright to drag out the match in a way Deku would have no doubt she is better, as Toga wouldn't use her quirk to attack, but just use normal combat techniques to show the extreme difference in her learned skills.
It wasn't your power at work?
No, that's just a technique.
Then contrasting the hero school system Deku is a part of by actively dragging the reputation of the two most prestigious hero schools' names through the mud. With kidnapping and replacing one as to get too high, students then just going inside without raising the alarm. Which then being able to go to this test with those stolen credentials through that school shows a complete, utter breakdown of the security. Which being an unimaginable embarrassment for that school, which up to this point was considered top tier. Then for UA High, beating around the star student without using powers is an extreme embarrassment. Especially as Toga took it easy on Deku, not finishing him off, then letting him get back up with the intention he lose again. Toga clearly was aiming to demonstrate the superiority of a radical hero group training, which combining that with clearly actively trying to eliminate Deku's options in the hero career by making him lose the chances at getting his provisional hero license, would clearly be aimed at having Deku convinced to try out Toga's group, as he would have no other option, and be convinced it is a far superior option compared to UA High due to Toga's demonstration. But there was a second part to it. Toga also, after saying her recruitment pitch, Toga specifically said now it is time for her own questions.
Now my question, why exactly do you want to become a hero?
Which then Toga started to just solely dig into why they should allow Deku to join. With the questions on why Deku became a hero and things relevant to what kind of a hero Deku is. Which was Toga judging this rando's worthiness to join a group. After Toga did the required recruitment pitch, she was ordered to do so. An unnecessary step as Toga was clearly ordered to bring Deku in. But with such a clearly have to be prestigious group Toga came from, this would have prideful members not like some rando getting in without proving themselves like the other members did. So even so Toga was going forward with recruiting Deku, she wanted to force Deku to explain himself, so she can judge his worthiness. To look for the motive on Toga's more extreme sexual behaviors shown here, Toga killed and replaced the blood-draining mass murderer, which Toga decided sexual desires to be the fake motivation for the killer she is pretending to be. If at any time the villains observed Toga acting like her foreign normal self, there'd be a high chance she'd be found out. So Toga needed to blend in her fake psycho personality heavily into her actions at all times to maintain her fake persona, which includes hero-sanctioned operations. So Toga was forced to at least sexually harass the heroes she's working with a lot. Which since Toga has the highest level of clearance and be expected to be heavily used by the heroes, Toga would be told at least Deku is very important in some way, so would explain why Toga was early on stating to the villains she fell in love with Deku the moment she saw him.
And I found a cute boy I'm interested in.
To make the expected to happen in the future significant long periods of time, Toga is with Deku, not suspicious at the earliest point possible. So we now know enough of what was going on to finally be able to properly analyze this battle start to finish. Having this time, we just focus on the intent of why they did what they did. First, the reason why they fought. Toga was ordered to recruit Deku into a radical hero organization by giving the sales pitch then remove his normal hero career options by eliminating Deku from the licensing exam, which Toga used the League of Villains mission to get some of Deku's blood to have an excuse to get to Deku for the other mission. Toga found Deku isolated, but with Deku's original quirk labeling Toga as an ally, Deku's original quirk let and probably even assisted Toga to come up Deku undetected by manipulating how Deku moves, making him easy to get snugged up on, especially with a time limit, with Deku still needing to complete tasks to pass the licensing exam. So it tried to make this meeting as quick as possible. Which then Toga started her recruitment pitch, by first hitting Deku's first target but not unfairly finishing him off so she can have Deku conclude how superior Toga's group is. Toga then further diminished the reputation of the hero schools by pointing out the bad job Deku was doing in this situation by staring off into space, showing a lack of training and having Deku not able to guard himself, which would hurt the reputation of the schools that trained him. But unknown to Toga, that was due to Deku's original quirk assisting Toga to get to Deku to allow them to have a secret meeting and conclude it as quick as possible. But with this long conversation, Deku's original quirk had enough time to adjust the plan to guard the targets from Toga, making it nearly impossible for Toga to now eliminate Deku from the licensing exam during this stage of the exam. They fought, but when Toga went for Deku's targets, she was blocked, but when she wasn't, she was allowed to talk, even allowed to restrain Deku as long as she didn't go for one of Deku's targets. Eventually, Toga completed her recruitment pitch and stated now she wanted to ask her own questions, in which Toga started asking questions to find out why this rando was being recruited into a prestigious hero group, by asking Deku all sorts of questions on why Deku became a hero. The battle went on for a while, which eventually they got ambushed, but they got away. They even hid together again due to Deku's original quirk was still trying to let Toga state why she was there. But this time, due to Toga's previous severe behavior, Deku's original quirk had manipulated the battlefield to force Toga to retreat if she gets out of hand again. Then after that, Toga again tried to get Deku's targets, though it wasn't enough for Deku's original quirk to decide to defeat Toga outright, so it allowed the interaction to continue. But as they were talking, Toga generally liked all the responses Deku was giving her. But his problems before in the battle against Toga annoyed her with how bad he did when she attacked him, which was secretly due to Deku's original quirk, trying to let Toga have a quick meeting with Deku. But after that, when Deku faced the ones that ambushed him, he was incredible. So Toga could see Deku may actually be really good, and looks to have before held back against her. Which as Toga wanted to fully judge Deku on if he is worthy, she decided to force Deku to fight at full strength. So Toga activated the most aggressive stance she could to make Deku not hold back and use everything he has against Toga, by making herself look like a freak, with turning into a naked form of herself, then viciously attacking, which Toga chose such an approach as she killed and replaced the blood-draining mass murderer, so had to mix in the sexual harassing tactics into her approach. Toga had secretly references by stating she will get dressed when her mission is complete, which she then immediately got some of Deku's blood for the mission for the League of Villains, but didn't get dressed.
I'll get dressed when my mission's complete!
A slight reference to the fact she hadn't completed her true mission to recruit Deku yet. But then Toga got hit by the unknown to her Deku's original quirk as it decided to not hold back and use its previous battlefield manipulation to force Toga to leave. So now that we have the motive, we run into strong warning signs of something being terribly wrong. It is extremely unlikely the world governments would have ever condoned such a mission. They wanted the symbol of peace to come back to publicly continue the golden age with an ultimate hero looking over society, as All Might, the previous symbol of peace, had done before, not having it hidden in the dark underground of the secret operations. Therefore, Toga's mission could not have been condoned by the secret agent command. Now, Toga being such a well-trusted secret agent would not have made such a betrayal easily, therefore something made her fight against the government's wishes. Well, this sounds like something a rogue group of people in the upper parts of the hero operations would have needed to do, which we have been tracking the revolutionary operation from within the hero side that would love to hinder Deku's career, and also would love to kill Deku as they already tried to kill him already in the pursuit of destroying the god-level powers that keep the previous ones in power. Looking at the current state of the Revolutionaries, they had just completed the major operation, ending with a partial success. They wanted to destroy One for All and All for One by taking out the 3 ones that wielded it. All Might, which they had him lose his remaining power, All for One, who is now in a physical jail, and a mental jail with the toxic quirk they put in his mind, with Revolutionaries running a significant part of the security of the physical jail he is in, so they think they can handle him. But the truth was they just scrambled that plan together after the primary plan failed, due to a tracking device exposing the location of where All for One was supposed to be assassinated far too early to the heroes, which then the heroes got All for One far too early, having the Revolutionaries scrambled together a new plan that looked promising. Which his secondary plan will fail, as Future Deku has stated there will be at least one more showdown with All for One, where the Revolutionaries in no way had wanted the person wielding the god-level powers to try to take control ever again. Which means in some way, shape, or form an escape from the Revolutionaries' current secondary plan will happen, therefore they won't be able to hold All for One in jail. Which we can't expect that to be followed by a currently in this chronological analysis unknown tertiary plan that they are currently working on, as these Revolutionaries won't take any chances, therefore would make contingency plans for if All for One escapes the jail alive. They are determined in their pursuit of the destruction of these god-level powers to give the power to try to path forward for humanity back to the hands of the general population, instead of that small group of people who use those god-level powers to maintain control and shape the world into what they want, while also ignoring the growing discontent from the vast majority of everyone else due to the suppressed people can't fight back against those god-level powers that are keeping them in line. And at the same time, the ones using those god-level powers have shown to not be that good at it, with how both the villains and hero side that wield those powers were seen almost losing it all. The Revolutionaries don't care how many they kill or how much they destroy in a radical level pursuit of their goals, which we can expect Camino Ward will be the first of many bloodbaths they cause, as Future Deku stated before the revolutionary plans would lead to the worst events in the My Hero Academia story. And lastly, Deku, who instead of dying as he wanted, he completely got away. At this point, they figured if they could just end Deku, they should be able to pull off a total victory, getting the plans back on track. And at this point, probably wanted the god-level powers completely gone by now. They would not be able to outcompete the scanning Quirk and Deku they are aware of if they attack Deku directly, as Deku's virtual Quirk would notice and piece together the evidence over time with extreme precision and efficiency. Then it'd hunt them down. So the Revolutionaries would focus on compromising things and get to Deku without leaving a trail of scannable evidence, which the Revolutionaries were before directly communicating with Toga to coordinate their efforts in the summer training camp attack for the operation to get All for One. So had direct access to Toga already, who is someone Deku's virtual Quirk trusts. The recruiting Deku into Toga's group, if it was a lie told by the Revolutionaries, it sounded like a well-designed, convincing, and profitable-sounding venture to get the symbol of peace to work for them solely. And then, with eliminating Deku from the licensing exam, Toga's group would probably run into severe problems as they face unimaginable amount of backlash, therefore not allowed to recruit Deku, leaving Deku's hero career heavily damaged as the villains' attacks become greater and greater and opportunities slip away from Deku, having Deku backed heavily into a corner due to the legal restraints by not having a hero license, which would probably not end well for Deku, especially since it would make him an easier target for the Revolutionaries. So this does clearly look like the Revolutionaries were trying to take down Deku by destroying his hero prospects to push him into a corner to make it easier to finish him off later, which then killing Deku would lead to the government deciding they can't afford All for One to escape without One for All power readily available, so would attempt to abandon whatever the reason they were keeping All for One alive, and just kill him. Even if there were strong reasons to resist such an action, the Revolutionaries had already compromised the jail security, with Ragdoll helping them avoid her scanning Quirk that was inside All for One, so had people on the inside to immediately try to kill All for One once the information on the One for All wielder death comes in, even if a higher up tries to tell them not to, having the Revolutionaries win completely if Deku dies. So at this point, we do see the Revolutionaries will be attacking Deku constantly, from now on, with relentless attacks until the war between Deku and the Revolutionaries changed drastically. We can see in the response to the sudden massive fall of these god-level powers, the orders have come down from the society higher-ups to start addressing the concerns of the population. As clearly shown with the government meetings and how the licensing exam was run. As they stated, they were trying to now appease the masses that can now fight back without those god-level powers blocking them. But from what I've seen of the Revolutionaries, they don't trust them, thinking it was only a temporary change of heart caused by them being pushed into a corner. Therefore, the Revolutionaries want to finish off any chance they do it again. Which, as the story of My Hero Academia will show in the future, that general type of ideal is a very common hidden ideal among the general population. It is clear at this point the Revolutionaries we are following are just going to take the role as hidden manipulative assassins, hidden in the background. As clearly this is their current tactic, but also they can't survive at all if they are exposed, as their power comes from being a revolutionary force hidden inside the upper parts of society, dependent on the access to resources there. Which those critical resources would quickly be removed if they are exposed as revolutionaries. Therefore, they probably have no intention to ever step out of the shadows throughout the story of My Hero Academia, as they choose out of necessity to strike from the shadows in ways that can't be tracked, and are especially careful as the main target Deku has his original scanning quirk ability to figure them out if they leave scannable data within a large distance from it. While at the same time, the Revolutionaries will also need to avoid tipping off the main villain and hero side to existence, as the Revolutionaries are much smaller than them, so easily overrun if their operation is brought to light. Which Deku's original quirk, if it found them, would obviously exploit that weakness to destroy them. Which makes this will be a battle of catching them rather than fighting them directly. And once they are caught, they shouldn't be able to continue the fight for that long, as they would have nothing after the resources and access are stripped away. But if they are never caught, then we can expect much of the major destructive events throughout the story will have them be secretly responsible. Which, as stated before, by Future Deku, the Revolutionaries' actions will lead to the worst events in the My Hero Academia series. So we can expect they won't be caught for a very long time, and probably after it is already too late to stop the most destructive parts of their plans. Since this is a retelling of events by Future Deku, we probably will have what they found out about them eventually be inserted into the story. But Future Deku seems to be handling this as what is the maximum that could have been found out about them at that point in the story, instead of just telling us everything. Except for vague future messages stating the Revolutionaries' actions will lead to the worst events in the My Hero Academia story, and that the Revolutionaries should be considered villains. Therefore, we can assume they were misguided. At this point, the heroes didn't have enough time to properly investigate the abnormalities in the Revolutionaries' tragic and convincing-looking cover story, and clearly are still in the stage of gathering enough data to start the process of getting suspicious of the right targets, as they are looking in the wrong direction for who betrayed them, not expecting a rebellion from the most trusted members, especially with how much was on the line, which the Revolutionaries will be discovered eventually, as Future Deku in his retelling of the story is describing what they did. But for now, they are well hidden. But the Revolutionaries had already failed critical objectives meant to keep them hidden, which were to kill all the Wild Wild Pussycat members that were not Revolutionaries and Koda. So the blood relative of Deku, who is Ragdoll, can run the revolutionary operation through the stolen Wild Wild Pussycats operation, without anyone that be familiar enough with the operation to notice a betrayal. But because all of them survived, they are probably going to start noticing many abnormalities in how their operation was being adjusted by Ragdoll. And their survival had left openings for evidence of Ragdoll's involvement in their individual near-death experiences, instead of the evidence being buried with them, which all can be reviewed in episode 11 of my series. These abnormalities include the Wild Wild Pussycat members were not given proper orders, leading to Ragdoll's team getting stuck in a battle they'd be slaughtered in. But after a massive amount of time of surviving, help arrived in time. Which if they died, they wouldn't have been able to report the fatal orders that were given by Ragdoll. And then with Koda, Ragdoll would have to explain why their objective to lead the far too powerful villains into a death trap had one of those villains pass through Koda's location. While Ragdoll, who was responsible to not let that happen, was the only one that knew Koda would be there due to her scanning, guaranteed that Ragdoll would know that Koda's secret hideout was there while no one else knew where it was. Which is supposed to be dead survivors explained that the generic looking rubble was actually Koda's secret hideout. Though Ragdoll can try to blame All for One and the unidentified insider threat they labeled a UA Traitor, with also a fake orchestrated tragic looking ending for Ragdoll, these are going to be added to the growing list of inconsistencies that are hurting the Revolutionaries' ability to remain undetected. Now getting back to the licensing exam, after Toga left, this situation basically turned into an automatic victory for Deku's original Quirk. Deku's original Quirk, with no one tracking him, would be able to track everyone around him, know the weaknesses, and clearly have a drop on them. Able to easily find and exploit vulnerabilities. Deku also kept his desires reasonable, just trying to pass the ones with him. So no overextending plan trying to fulfill an unreasonable desire, leading to an easy victory. The enemies Deku got did beg Deku to show mercy, as this was the final year they'd be allowed from the school to try to get their hero licenses. But this was Deku's original Quirk plan, which means there will be no mercy, as it is a sociopathic entity. We do see Toga grabbing one of the last open spots, which she looks disappointed. That was due to she was on a mission. She knew there'd be no guarantee she'd get another opportunity to get Deku, which is why she ended up being one of the last ones to pass, as Toga was looking for Deku, but knew time was up, so decided to pass the exam round to be able to hunt Deku in later rounds. After this, all the rest of Class 1A passed as well. As they were waiting for the final round of the test, we can see some suspicious activity around Uraraka and Toga. On the surface, it seems to be Uraraka jealousy against the girl she saw naked around Deku hitting on him. But then we run into some problems with this, as from now on, Uraraka would become consistently extremely distressed, way past what would have been considered reasonable. It was as if she was in a daze with how full-blown the emotional distress was, as if Uraraka was shaken to the core by something. Which the onset of jealousy isn't something that should have been able to trigger what was seen. But that is no ordinary person to Uraraka, as that is Toga, which Uraraka was the only one that knew the truth of Toga. We can see extremely strong symbolic signs something happened, with the symbolic light, and then the music was foreboding as Uraraka stared at Toga, strongly indicating something major happened. Which we can see that Toga is moving directly away from Uraraka, as if she came from Uraraka's position, did something, then walked away. All this strongly indicates Toga had just revealed herself to Uraraka. We can see the significant distress Uraraka was in, which may indicate Uraraka was just activated and told to assist Toga on making Deku fail a licensing exam to place him in a different hero career path inside the secret hero group's options. But at the same time, this wasn't directly stated. But according to my Future Deku narration theory that states this story is retelling events by Future Deku, simply put, if Future Deku didn't witness it, he'd be dependent on a trusted source or other forms of strong evidence that Deku gathered over time. Which we know Uraraka is not allowed to disclose the information to the classified data leaker Deku. And it'd be a painful conversation for Uraraka to have, having her having trouble admitting what she did to Deku, the one she did at the time of her betrayal's love. But if Future Deku knows it happened, then this scene should still secretly directly spell it out, in at least a cryptic way. So looking at the partially jumbled words of Uraraka thoughts, which may already indicate a hidden message, as there was plenty of openings to insert a hidden meaning into the jumbled statements. We look more at the structure and notice that the word spoken has no context, meaning Uraraka never stated clearly what she meant by any of her statements. The story only showed where Uraraka was currently at on-screen when those thoughts occurred, which are surroundings with the on-surface events, which all could have secretly had no relations to what Uraraka was actually thinking about, as the words didn't state the context. These types of secret messages are common in My Hero Academia, which they almost always are placed in with Mr. X and seem to match what was happening while secretly a hidden topic was actually being discussed. The words Uraraka stated are all composed of something I expect with such an intense conversation about this matter in the future, which would have the emotional Uraraka that is not allowed to answer his questions while being accused directly by Deku of betraying him, would have Uraraka give such pained indirect responses. If I do a little paraphrasing of what Uraraka said, we can see all the statements are composed of segments of a potential future heated conversation between Uraraka and Future Deku about such a betrayal. For example, "Did you betray me? I always loved you!" There was another statement in line with such a response, which was, "I always respected your drive to be a hero," which shows that Uraraka wasn't a willing enemy of Deku, as she did truly respect and care for him. His next statement, "I never wanted to change the path you were on," which a translation would be, she didn't want to, but she was just following orders. And the other statement, which is in line with "I was just following orders," which is, she pursued her hero career with the same level of drive Deku devotes to his. The translation would be, with Uraraka being a secret agent, following orders, as her hero career path, would mean strongly following those morally bankrupt orders, as well with the same level of drive Deku devote to his much more noble hero path. Which again states Uraraka would betray Deku if ordered to do so. While at the same time, all those statements don't admit anything directly, as Uraraka with such loyalty to the cause would have refused to answer, but the sheer emotional strain looks to have Future Uraraka indirectly answer, trying to signal to Future Deku to stop pursuing what had happened before, and just accept who she is now. Which, since that'd probably be the only type of responses Future Deku would get from Uraraka, besides a silence in response to some questions, that would limit how Future Deku presents Uraraka's thoughts and statements, as Future Deku prefers using the statements of the people he interviews in his retelling of the story. But even so they were incomplete statements, Future Deku would place it in a way to allow the truth to be extracted from it. The only thing we are missing at this point to prove it was a cryptic message is that, can we insert the true context? So let's try. Uraraka says she doesn't like this, referring to the order given due to the betrayal she was asked to do.
I don't like this.
She was fine fighting earlier before as a secret agent. And it is wrong to feel flustered, which is wrong to have love get in the way of her secret agent missions.
Why do I feel so flustered? I was fine when I was fighting earlier.
And last part saying, "but now," which refers to what the next move will be,
But now...
which we see Uraraka attempt to head over to her target Deku with also calling out to him. We strongly establish them choosing to work with each other in the next part of the exam, so Uraraka would have full access to her target. This is bad and will be a situation that now will haunt Deku for a long time to come. But fortunately for Deku at this point, Deku's original quirk was keeping an eye on Toga, so it overheard them as both didn't know Deku had a scanning quirk, which had heard Toga fully admit she is trying to eliminate Deku from the exam, to have Deku instead continue his hero career through secret agent operations. So Deku's original quirk adjusted its planning accordingly to defeat the threat to the plan to fulfill the desire of getting Deku to pass the licensing exam, making Deku's original quirk now considers Uraraka an enemy. We can look back at what Toga said and see she was sadistically taunting Uraraka and Deku about this early on, with a statement she said to Uraraka that Deku really trusts her.
Ochako Uraraka, he really trusts you a lot, you know.
Which was the sole reason why Toga used Uraraka here. Now we do notice Uraraka seems to be extremely distressed inside that building prior to this meeting between Toga and Uraraka. This looks to be a reference to the fact Future Deku would have no way to determine when Toga actually approached Uraraka. None of the students would have had their cell phones, and a building that opens up completely, having it become part of the floor, would probably not be able to handle adding in a camera security system, especially with the sheer amount of force it opened up with, breaking of ground with such a powerful impact, and still able to reclose and open up again. Nor did the runners of the test have any motive to do it, as their strategy was to first search them for anything that can cheat, with them place them all current participants into the middle of the arena, away from anywhere they can get supplies from the outside, at the start of each stage of the test and throughout the test. So they were already cleared of any contraband in a secure area, making it redundant to monitor them further. This environment would have at some point Toga hidden by a massive crowd able to approach the isolated Uraraka, while Deku was interacting with others and being yelled at by 2 other UA students for being seen with the naked Kami, while the rest of the UA was by their own words fighting for their lives. Having Deku's original quirk unable to interact with Uraraka when it saw the meeting happen, and probably unable to have Deku even see it happen due to how crowded the building was. So the exact point the meeting happened was lost to time, as it be classified due to being related to Toga. But since the meeting happened, Future Deku would insert the symbolism on that it happened, while at the same time without being able to write in the correct time it happened, as it was shown without a consistent symbolic timestamp. There also is another hidden message, as Deku's original quirk would have probably been active to support the love Deku feels to Uraraka, and it could see the sheer damage to that love relationship that was about to happen, so would have been expected to attack. Deku's original quirk would have probably automatically found an excuse for Deku to want to head to Uraraka at an angle in the crowded area, so neither Toga or Uraraka would see him coming, to catch him in the act. Then defuse the situation, which clearly the authority they have over each other would have stopped this conflict right then and there. Then have them try to resolve it secretly later on, which would have probably led to another set of issues. But we can see that Deku was being yelled at and prevented from moving by 2 of his friends, making Deku's original quirk completely unable to find a way for Deku to rush over to Uraraka without it being suspicious. Therefore would not have been pursued due to the social phobia not wanting Deku's manipulated actions to be obvious, and couldn't approach stealthily due to the yelling, which Deku being yelled at was heavily shown during the scenes Uraraka was distressed. Which probably means that action from his friends accidentally prevented Uraraka from being saved. It is also very common for this author to hide major evidence events with inside what appears to be joke scenes such as this one, with the intention of after you have a good laugh, you realize the punchline secretly was depressive and shocking. Now with this case with Sero, who accidentally stopped Deku's original quirk from saving Uraraka by instigating the group of UA students to yell at Deku, is very similar in how things went wrong with Yaoruzo, who had accidentally stopped Ragdoll's primary plan to deal with All For One in private with inside the secret villain base in the Camino Ward incident, which was done by putting a tracking device on a Nomu revealing All For One's location to ones not part of the assassination team, leading to his capture rather than his death. Basically, both Sero and Yaoruzo were far too good. They both were at the time of the mistakes powerful and highly trained students that were surrounded by secret operations they did not know about, which the secret operations plans can be expected to be repeatedly upended by them, as those of far too skilled students rise to the challenge facing the issues the secret operations wanted to handle in their own way, which would break the chain of events that was supposed to happen for the secret plans to work. Sero was just competently following Uraraka, fighting alongside her during the test, which had him witness the secret operation. But Sero didn't know he needed to back off, as no one told him anything about how important it is to not interfere with situations between Deku's original quirk and Toga. The clearance needed to even understand that event was so high that basically almost no one could have known. And probably from among those people, many would not have had the authorization to intervene. So without that critical information, Sero decided to intervene by gossiping with the other students. Which if Sero wasn't there, then Deku's original quirk would have been able to save Uraraka, instead of being held back by his classmates yelling at him. Just like how Yaoruzo, who was just far too good for the situation, but at the same time wasn't told she needed to back off. Which both changed things that broke the need to have happen chain of events, leading to a far darker future. We can't expect the current list of non-secret agents Class 1A students that have done this will grow as time goes by, as that is an underlying problem that can't be fixed. The secret operations are trying to manipulate events around people that are extremely hard to manipulate. Only real question is, when will this happen next? Then the second stage started, which was a simulated wide-scale rescue operation by destroying the previous large arena structures and place HUC members throughout them, which were actors that played the victims in the simulated rescue areas, which they will be graded for how they handle the victim actors in the area, with also a powerful secret villain attack near the later portion. The winning conditions was kept partially secret based off a demerit system, which you can only lose points, and if you drop below 50, you lose. Since the people running the test knew of scanning quirks, getting valuable intel for the event ability to screw the results, they would make sure they hid the information in ways that can't be scanned, such as only thinking about how the point system works until it was obvious what the rules were to them, and also having the villain actors not be near any obvious entry point, but instead suddenly stop moving to an entrance and then soon after bust down a wall of the arena to get in, catching scanning quirks off guard. Now to start the event, with Class 1A's predictable strategy of attempting to work together mostly, Deku was stuck with the Traitor Uraraka, as Deku's original quirk wouldn't force Deku to especially adjust his behavior to a threat he didn't know about to keep Deku's original quirk hidden, so wouldn't try to have Deku evade Uraraka without a good excuse, which at that point Toga would be planning to get close by to coordinate efforts with the Traitor Uraraka, which you can see that Toga eventually disappeared from the event.
Hey, Kami ran off again. What's her deal lately?
Showing she was moving to assist her partner Uraraka in secret, but Deku still had time before Toga arrived to make a move. When Class 1A ran up to the first HUC member that was acting as an injured child, we see Deku rush forward, trying to be the first one to grab the HUC member and care for him, which had to be a tactical move by Deku's original quirk, as it'd be actively moving Deku around to evade the threat. So Deku rushing ahead of everyone heading to such a major factor must have been part of his plan. While the Traitor Uraraka again quickly caught up and stayed close to Deku, probably trying to establish they will be a team during this event. With Deku's original quirk completely countered the Traitor Uraraka's plan by Deku stating he alone, with his super speed, will deliver the injured person to the far away from the medical zone that was established by other students, which would have Deku successfully flee Uraraka and Toga before they could have done anything. Especially since Uraraka wasn't as fast as Deku, so wouldn't have an excuse to follow him, when she could be helping the others with removing gravity from the debris, so had no excuse to head with Deku to the medical evacuation zone. And for Toga, she didn't slip away in time from Shiketsu High to reach Uraraka before Deku left, where Deku ended up in a wide open clear area with no chance an ambush can be launched from anywhere in a professional, extremely busy environment, needing plenty of extra hands to allow Deku to stay with them, while also wouldn't tolerate anyone misbehaving. Therefore, even if Toga and Uraraka entered, they'd be prone to being kicked out if they tried anything to harm Deku. Which then, Deku's original quirk forced Deku to stay there in that safe zone, which was far better than the highly varied environment he could get ambushed in, especially if Uraraka would have insisted on teaming up with Deku out there. We see Uraraka, unlike everyone else who were quickly looking for more people to help. Uraraka instead just stared off at Deku as he left, running away for a long time, showing the shock of Deku making such a move crippling our mission's ability to succeed. With Uraraka probably thinking how could she fix this unexpected problem as she sees no way to keep her target from leaving, and would have to explain what went wrong to Toga later on. That type of shock does explain why Uraraka let everyone else in her class run ahead of her for a long time as well. Now during this rush, Deku's original quirk did lose some points by rushing to the first opportunity to get away from the threat, made it so Deku's original quirk didn't have time to scan for the HUC members, lecturing the other students of mistakes that were made. So when Deku approached the HUC member, he winged it and was quickly yelled out for such an unprofessional, misinformed approach. But those 5 points lost was nothing compared to the threat Deku evaded. Looking at Uraraka the entire time, she was clearly under extreme distress with Deku, showing how much she didn't want to betray Deku, but with her actions showed she made up her mind to do it as a secret agent, due to the lie told to her about getting Deku into a designated secret group his hero career can continue in. Analyzing Uraraka's partial thoughts given by Future Deku shows it is heavily cryptic, but does lay out what I said if we decode it. First, stating the love feeling is something she should not be focused on. The love needs to be pushed away.
This buzz in my chest, what am I doing? I've gotta push these feelings down.
Uraraka states Deku is giving his all, and Uraraka doesn't want to change that, which a Toga scene is shown directly after referencing the one who told Uraraka to change it.
Deku is giving his all to reach his goal. No room for anything else. I don't want to change that.
And also the emotional music picks up strongly with Toga on screen, indicating the one who is causing this.
You've got a crush on someone, right?
Then Uraraka states she will put those love feelings away and work just as hard as Deku does, showing Uraraka deciding to push those love feelings away and reach her dream, that is being a secret agent hero just as strongly as Deku pursues his dream, even so that means she will betray Deku.
I'll put these feelings away. I'll focus on working just as hard as he does and reach my dream.
So admitting she did decide to take Deku down, which at that point it was clear her classmates were far too far away and Uraraka knew she couldn't approach Deku for now without jeopardizing her ability to get the provisional license, as the judges knew Uraraka's ability would be most effective where she was now. So Uraraka ran to Class 1A to help out blending in, waiting for the next opportunity to get Deku. Which the music was emotionally intense the whole time, symbolizing the hidden conflict in the scene. Just looking at the statements of how much it stated Uraraka was pushing the love away from Deku, and now we know the hidden message of stating she is destroying Deku's hero career, we can now see one more hidden message. This was Uraraka saying goodbye to Deku, leaving him as she knew Deku would not forgive her and she wouldn't deserve him, after such a betrayal, as Uraraka chooses to be a secret agent over having a happy life with Deku. In pursuit of escaping the secret agents, Deku ended up where the next stage would happen that was specifically being targeted by the villain actors, the area that rescued Huck members were being gathered to further test the hero's ability to respond to a crisis, which the villain actors busted through the arena wall suddenly, then charged at them from a distance. Looking at the villains, they were clearly too powerful for Deku's original Quirk to fight them head-on. The massive amount of minions were the main problem, as they had those rapid-fire cement guns, so if Deku's original Quirk tried the optimizing dodging when facing them, it'd be overwhelmed, with no chance to dodge, having Deku being eliminated quickly. Which that alone makes it impossible to fight the boss, Gang Orca, who'd be an extremely powerful opponent by himself regardless. So we do see Deku take a more supportive stance, allowing the Quirk wielders with powers more suited for the conflict to take the lead in combat. And it also clearly saw the lose condition having the minions surround the medical center, blasting the injured away. So Deku's original Quirk for the beginning chose to prioritize moving the rescue targets that would cause the most trouble, explaining why the next time we see Deku, he was carrying a person that seemed to be unable to walk on their own, as the heroes are fighting the villain actors. So with this understanding of the tactics that will be used by Deku's original Quirk, we start analyzing the battle. The hero's single rear guard faced the villains, which he launched a powerful ground attack, tearing through the minions of the main villain, now giving Deku the opportunity to have openings to attack the villains. But then Gang Orca went up and struck the rear guard down. But with this rear guard completely gone, with the villains charging in, Deku stopped moving as a freezing weakness happened, which was due to Deku's original Quirk quickly started making a new plan, which it can't readjust what it did to Deku for a while as it processes a new plan, causing a sort of freezing of both physical and mental manipulation it was doing to Deku, having Deku stuck doing the previous steps of the failed plan for a small period of time. Which explains Deku just standing there in this case instead of immediately addressing the sudden threat. But then Gang Orca didn't just attack, instead lecturing them, giving Deku's allies enough time to revive, which included the powerful Todoroki, instead of Deku having to fight. Which, with the real guard in place, this bought the time needed for Deku's original quirk to go through another freezing weakness process to start back up the scrapped plan, then continued optimizing the evacuation of the injured. It clearly looked like the fight against the villains were going well, but Deku's original quirk can't scan minds, so didn't realize the disaster that was about to happen. Todoroki and the Wind Quirk guy ended up bickering and not working together, embarrassing themselves in front of the villains. The bickering happened for so long the villains' actors lectured them, even stating them doing nothing to the villain right in front of them is disgraceful. And then the runners of the exam was disgusted as well, which Deku's original quirk was scanning the unexpected disaster unfolding. Deku's original quirk had enough time to readjust and now planned to put Deku into the battlefield as support for the unexpected failures happening, which is unprofessional Todoroki and the Wind Quirk guy messing up had accidentally fired one of their attacks at the first to fall rear guard, which Deku's original quirk was already scanning the situation for ways it can help, so was ready, having Deku rush in saving the heroes from the mess up. Deku then yelled back at them saying, "What the hell are you doing?" which had them start snapping out of it, but it was too little, too late, and Gang Orca struck both of the unprofessional heroes down. Deku's original quirk assumed a complete collapse was happening and Deku needed to handle the villains now or the villains would overrun the medical evacuation zone. Which Deku's original quirk using scanning realized the real guard that fell at the beginning was about to be ready to launch another one of the effective devastating attacks that could clear out the minions who had those rapid-fire cement shooters that made it impossible for Deku to attack them directly. So Deku's original quirk forced Deku to stand his ground between the villains in the medical zone, and place down the unknown ready to fight rear guard he just saved in a spot he can safely launch a powerful attack effectively, while also being a significant distance away from the area they're trying to keep the villains from. Which without mental manipulation, that would have seemed like a bad idea due to dodging and protecting a downed teammate at the same time was an impossible task. So Deku would have dropped him off at the evacuation zone, then run back to get between the charging villains and the evacuation zone if Deku's thoughts weren't altered by his original quirk. With the counterattack set up, the original real guard got up and launched a needed massive attack, striking down the charging minions in mass, now having Deku's original quirk have the ability to engage them without being struck down instantly. But then unexpectedly, Todoroki and the Wind Quirk guy launched a powerful combination and counterattack, creating a fire tornado on Gang Orca, delaying Deku from needing to face Gang Orca. But Deku's original quirk saw it was buying a lot of time, and Deku would be unable to help due to the fire tornado was not something it could effectively assist with in any way, so it instead targeted the disrupted minions to hold them back from the evacuation. With the quickly arriving reinforcements, the situation against the minions were only going to get easier, allowing Deku's original quirk to safely make Deku more and more effective as time goes on. But during this, Todoroki and the Wind Quirk guy finally failed, completely unable to hold Gang Orca back anymore. Deku's original quirk scanning saw that it's coming and planned for that inevitable outcome. We can see Deku's original quirk position Deku, having him get distracted by the fire tornado instead of fighting elsewhere, allowing Deku to rush in immediately, which Deku rushed in at the last second, right when they were about to be struck down, buying the maximum time to let the two downed people who screwed up recover, and it was during Gang Orca's finishing move, so he was distracted, allowing an ambush to hit Gang Orca, which is a common action of Deku's original quirk to make Deku move in at the best time that often includes the last second to buy time, plus in a way the enemies wouldn't see coming. But with this plan, Deku on his own would be the sole person holding back Gang Orca for a while. A devastatingly powerful opponent that Deku might not be able to win against. With Deku's original quirk planned to rely on the fact he'd have reinforcements eventually arrive to tip the battle more into Deku's favor, and how much Gang Orca was already weakened. But then, the judges decided the heroes did enough, and it'd not be necessary to continue, as the heroes already demonstrated they took back control of the situation against the villains, gathered enough people in need of rescue, and move the injured rescued targets far enough away from the villain actors, so to not cause any unnecessary injuries and end the test. And that concludes the 101 battle between Deku and Gang Orca. The judges did apologize for being anticlimactic, but it was a test, not an actual battle. Gang Orca did after that admit with the damage he took, he had doubts he'd be able to handle Deku.
He might have had a hard time if the test went on, even lost.
Therefore, we can confirm Deku's original quirk was confidently attacking Gang Orca, not just being forced to by circumstance. We do see Uraraka had at this point made it to the medical's evacuation zone, which was Deku's last known location, showing Uraraka was looking for Deku. But at the point she arrived, Deku had already left to officially face Gang Orca, so Uraraka and Toga were unable to do anything as Deku's original quirk evaded them successfully, all the way to the official end of the exam. After the event concluded, we can see that Deku passed, but the notes on what he did wrong did reflect his original quirk. Besides the first mistake Deku did while evading Uraraka and Toga, the active actions Deku took, he didn't lose any more points over as expected with his scanning quirk optimizing Deku's actions, but he lost points for specifically standing around doing nothing at times, and he lost a lot of it.
I got 71 points. It looks like they mostly docked me for some of the stupid things I said at the beginning and for times when I was just kind of standing around.
Which was Deku's original quirk freezing weakness, as a constantly changing environment of the chaotic medical zone had plan after plan suddenly get scrapped, leading to the freezing weakness happening over and over again, which would create the exact type of behavior Deku lost points for, standing around and doing redundant tasks, as it was stuck on a scrapped plan for a short period of time, over and over again. Deku's original quirk under normal circumstances would have aced this test, as demonstrated before, it prefers to wait as it scans the test to see how to optimize Deku's performance. But Deku making that first mistake, mishandling the first rescue victim by rushing blindly ahead, losing 5 points, and later on we see even more points lost, which was 24 points. Means Deku's original quirk wasn't focused on optimizing the score Deku gets according to the normal rules of the exam, or Deku would have had around 95 points instead of 71. So Deku's original quirk, instead of optimizing for the regular test, had to have been completely focused on something else that was a far bigger threat to Deku being able to pass the exam for the score to make sense with the abilities Deku has. After they are leaving with their provisional licenses in hand, Uraraka noticed Deku's emotional states distracting her, so she asked Deku what was the matter. Which with Deku saying how proud of getting the provisional license he is, also with how Deku was specifically giving credit to all the people that helped him along the way to getting that provisional hero license, which Uraraka was one of them until just recently, and it being proof on how much he grew as a hero, which Uraraka tried to end Deku's pro-hero career. Those types of statements would obviously hit Uraraka hard, as you can see the most nervous smile and strain in her voice, and she knew she had tried to make Deku fail the exam, so gave a pained response.
Yeah, I get it.
As this is the last scene with Uraraka in this video, we should address the implications of Uraraka being considered the main love interest of Deku. Which we can tell now the chances of them ever seriously moving forward with a love relationship had secretly collapsed, without Deku realizing it. But since we were able to see Uraraka unprofessional behavior in front of her direct supervisor Froppy, with Uraraka not able to hold back her love emotions, despite Froppy knows Uraraka is not allowed to pursue that love with Deku. This clearly shows Uraraka's sex drive is not going to back off, with how it also tried to force Uraraka to love Deku even when she was actively betraying Deku. Therefore, Uraraka, or more specifically her hormones, will be looking out for people that could fill the void that Deku left behind if the slither of a chance of it working out between herself and Deku doesn't work out. But there is an impactful secret operations limit, as they are afraid if Uraraka works around other male secret agents, they could form a love relationship, with how that male would be the only male around Uraraka that would truly understand her, which Deku would notice, then his jealousy would activate his original quirk to attack. So they avoided recruiting male students in Class 1A. The only male student that bypassed that mission so far was Bakugo, which Bakugo got his security clearance due to Deku leaking classified information, forcing the governments to bring Bakugo in. Though that time was his original quirk, specifically forcing Deku to leak information to repair their friendship. I should cover how Bakugo event impacts the secret agent student operation, since I mentioned it. And it is another defining event in this situation with the secret agent students. First off, in regard to Deku's original quirk handling of the situation with Bakugo confronting Deku directly about what he figured out. Simply put, there was no real manipulation needed at this point in the story when Bakugo confronted Deku about having one for all. All the manipulation was all at the beginning, which is covered in my third episode in this series. Which in that episode, Deku went to his first hero class in UA High. During this, Deku was lonely, wanting friends as he arrived at the new school. So Deku's original quirk rigged a drawing for the training event to create a situation Deku would get closer to everyone that stood out to Deku at that point in time, which was Ida, Uraraka, and Bakugo. But for Bakugo, it forced Deku to leak enough information on how Deku got one for all, so that Bakugo would eventually piece the rest together. As clearly how Deku got his power was a major barrier keeping Bakugo and Deku from being friends. Which Bakugo did figure it out near the end of the third season, completing this long-term plan of Deku's original quirk. Which is now getting back to the current state of this situation. Since Deku knew that Bakugo figured it out, Deku didn't need any form of mental manipulation to have Bakugo take Deku away from everyone to confront him to attempt to keep this quiet by dealing with this situation in an isolated area. At most, Deku's original quirk prevented Deku from reaching out to anyone else for help, prior to Bakugo taking Deku away for the showdown. As Deku's original quirk knew Bakugo would not react well if anyone tried to interfere in how he wanted to resolve this problem between himself and Deku. So to allow the maximum level of healing of this relationship between Bakugo and Deku, it would make sure Deku would defer all decisions on how it should be done to Bakugo. Which since Bakugo wanted a straightforward duel, that is what it was, so Deku's original quirk ignored the environment advantages to not interfere with how Bakugo wanted to resolve the tension. Which as seen before, highly skilled, fast, versatile, and powerful opponents such as Bakugo can overwhelm Deku's original quirk, especially when there are no other hidden scannable options which an honorable straightforward duel without weapons would be. So Bakugo won. But after that, with Bakugo being briefed on most of the classified information relevant to the UA High area, they obviously would also reveal the student secret agents to him. Especially as Bakugo was clearly a top-tier hero, a basic game changer on how effective the student secret agent operation would be. A basic perfect replacement of Todoroki, the secret agent they didn't get. But as Bakugo said, he knows how to keep his mouth shut, so didn't tell Deku he knew of those student secret agents. But with this, the entire dynamic between Deku and his secret agent students completely changed. As Bakugo had through his situation fulfilled the role the student secret agents were made for. To be someone Deku can turn to when in danger when within Class 1A, to immediately coordinate attacks and defenses with. So Deku wouldn't be hindered by not being able to tell Class 1A anything about what was truly going on when danger approached. And Bakugo with his dominant personality would fulfill Froppy's role to strongly influence how Deku's desires form in situations, to prevent or diminish the effect of improper desires creating malfunctioning plans, from Deku's original quirk. But Bakugo wouldn't just fulfill the role, he far exceed it, as Bakugo clearly is a person that takes command aggressively, which would effectively beat down the plans Deku's original quirk could be pursuing regardless if they were good or not. Therefore, the bad plans would have a much lower chance to slip through, while at the same time have no trouble to make Bakugo seem like a wealth of information Deku's original quirk would seek out in important situations, to constantly activate containment of Deku's original quirk in a reliable way. Plus, Bakugo was strong enough to handle any problems Deku's original quirk may cause for Bakugo himself. So they wouldn't even need to tell Bakugo of the danger of Deku's original quirk, keeping the amount of people that know about Deku's original quirk weaknesses to the minimum. This clear completion of the mission meant the secret agent student operation would now have no reason to ever approach Deku, as he had already been protected in the way they were meant to. So this would be the out they were probably looking for, able to now go back to their normal mission of training the chosen recruits from the superpowered high schools. Then after graduation, bring them fully into the secret agent's operations for their pro-hero careers. Which is again another mistake Deku's original quirk made, that pushed Deku away from the student agent secret operation. But this time this looks to have completely finished off any chance Deku would get the original members of the secret agent students direct support, and it is especially tragic since this disruption made it so they didn't even realize that the help Deku was supposed to get had actually needed saving themselves. If that scanning quirk wielder Deku was allowed to directly interact with them, therefore allowed to sort through the data he was blocked from scanning, Deku's original quirk would have optimally and effectively unraveled the malicious order scheme and at least stop it from continuing, though may not catch the ones responsible. But with this mistake with Bakugo, Deku can't save Uraraka, as a secret agent student operation unknowingly actively prevented Deku from even figuring out Uraraka was in danger, and also prevented Deku from realizing he was in danger as Uraraka continues trying to support Deku. Now to look at the last parts involving Toga, we can see after things settled down, Deku's original quirk with now not having Toga able to have him fail the licensing exam, tried to reach out to her to see if Toga would give him useful information, asking about if Deku could contact her instead of the normal response of hoping to never see that crazy girl from Chiketsu High ever again, which was due to mental manipulation, but was told the disguised Toga left with no contact information available. So Deku's original quirk assumed it to just let it go, expecting another meeting in the future, that this time Deku's original quirk won't be as open to allowing Toga to do whatever she wants, if Deku's hero career would be on the line, but still work with her as she is considered a valuable ally. Later on, we see Toga returning to the League of Villains, taking off her quirk disguise, and stated she completed the mission for the League of Villains. But Toga was actually trying a different mission, just found an excuse to be sent out there unsupervised to complete the true mission. But during all this, Toga didn't show signs she knew she was being used by the Revolutionaries, having herself continued to be compromised by the Revolutionaries. But through Toga, they compromised Uraraka, which through Uraraka, the Revolutionaries now have a direct path to Deku, which we will see as time goes by. The Revolutionaries will continue going after Deku to destroy one for all through Uraraka and Toga. They are determined and relentless. It is not going to get any easier to figure out what truly is going on between Toga and Uraraka. Their acting and carefulness most of the time makes it nearly impossible to prove who they truly are. Though we have already been shown several clear points that reveal the truth, but at the same time it wasn't obvious to the in-story characters when those events happened. For Uraraka, as stated before, not mentioning Deku told her about All for One, despite that godlike villain revealed himself to the world while destroying a section of a city and forcing the symbol of peace into retirement. For Toga, you can see during the montage of what the villains were currently doing, which was not even fighting yet, had Toga already tracking Uraraka and Froppy, but then waited over a half hour till there were hero reinforcements coming to her location, which had given the excuse Toga needed to retreat, which you can observe from the episode and timestamp that is currently on screen for that point in time this occurred. And then later on, when attacking Deku at the final fight of the summer training camp attack, Toga had done everything possible to get Choji to defend Deku from herself, so that Toga would fight a person that couldn't get killed by her stabbing attacks, due to his high degree of regeneration. Toga even paused to oppose while loudly screaming out her intentions to force Choji to think he should attempt to blindside such a highly skilled assassin. But Toga allowed Choji to do it, then claimed she solely will attack Choji so she can get to Deku, which removed any chance Toga would kill anyone. And last example, the previously mentioned forensic data of one of Toga's kills, revealing her hidden power of using other people's quirks. Those problems were clearly not enough compared to their amazing acting and cautious actions, making everyone around them not question them. Which will make it hard for Future Deku, who lost his security clearance, to be able to piece their true story together. Which, since this is a retelling events by Future Deku, this is our problem as well. Especially since it is very unlikely Deku will ever get the security clearance needed to access any information about Toga. But this being a retelling events by Future Deku makes it get far worse than that, as Future Deku knows Toga replaced many major villains and used those stolen credentials to coordinate attacks with the hero side to destroy their entire criminal enterprises. Therefore, Future Deku knows if he just wrote down everything he'd found out about, he'd be forsaking countless people, giving life to countless extremely vile criminal enterprises that would then know how to counterstrike due to they would know how they were attacked. With how they would know the members were being impersonated by a shapeshifter that can't be detected, which a trail of the replaced member of the villain organizations would probably lead to many other hero advantages they have, having them be attacked, which is something Future Deku wouldn't want. Therefore, we can expect the story may actually lie and omit things to us as Future Deku attempts to hide the true impact Toga had on the world when exposing her secret identity in his retelling of events. We gotta keep in mind that this is a written down recounting of the story that is translated to a visual form. Though Future Deku in the anime did reveal Toga has that power, it wasn't direct, nor did the important data linger on screen for too long, indicating it may not have been a detailed written statement, such as if writing down Toga killed and replaced the blood-draining mass murderer, but then omitted all the forensic data that was shown on screen, in a written form of that image. We can see that this evidence against Toga was part of a generic montage of images of the incoming villains, which may indicate the written portion may only have been focused on being a quick introduction into the villains with only a few sentences for each, therefore not enough to tell you the method used to kill the blood-draining mass murderer, which the image contained the omitted information. With all these issues, it honestly takes me multiple days looking over the same conversation and situation to generally figure out what happened, despite I know what to look for. So until I get to a deep dive on what a period of time covers, we won't really know what happened as the story is quite complicated and well hidden. Which, since we have 5 seasons to go, the story will probably remain a mystery for a long time, unless you're from the future when this series of mine is complete. But for now, my advice is to just don't trust anything you saw Toga do, and just assume Toga is far more impactful to the story than she appears to be at all times. It is true that the Revolutionaries sent Toga in half-cocked, with Toga not understanding the target Deku's amazing abilities. Which had the only reason Toga was beating up Deku was that Deku's original quirk held back, not using the scanning data of her movements most of the time, which may indicate there was more to this plan than just that objective due to its high chance of failure. But when Toga left, with the Revolutionaries now in control of Uraraka, who is someone with full access to Deku, I wouldn't be surprised if the true objective was in fact for Toga to find an excuse to as quick as possible establish that devastating authority of Uraraka. Without Toga before revealed herself to Uraraka, making Toga her highest level of leadership, then just left doing nothing with that authority still intact, but at the same time inactive, the Revolutionaries just needed an event like this to simply start back up Toga's control over Uraraka. With the added bonus of this might compromise Deku's hero career if Toga defeated Deku, which would have been devastating as well. Looking at the reason on why they decided to make the move at this event, though Toga had authority over Uraraka, it was inactive, and Toga had no easy way to reach Uraraka to activate her authority over Uraraka, due to Toga was actively within inside the ranks of the League of Villains, infiltrating them, which would not have allowed Toga to just head over to Uraraka's location unless Toga was given a mission by the League of Villains that put Toga close to Uraraka. which we can see at the end. Toga was sent by the League of Villains, therefore a mission to get some of Deku's blood. Now this part of the story doesn't contain why that objective was given to Toga, but it is clear was the first opportunity available, therefore why the highly motivated to move as quick as possible Revolutionaries immediately took advantage of the opportunity. We can also see in the 4th season the expected behavior of Toga trying to undo whatever the League of Villains' objective was. By having Toga drink the drop of blood she got from Deku in a non-suspicious way, with the excuse she needed to lure the heroes in, so disguised herself as Deku by drinking the blood she took from Deku. On top of the very little she got from Deku and the amount needed to at least be there for Toga to be able to use it. Toga probably hoped the League of Villains didn't get enough of Deku's blood for whatever they wanted to do. Looking at what their plan could be for Uraraka, first off, obviously if Deku is pushed into a corner by an ally being used to kill him, would be a highly effective strategy. Especially for the ones that have full access to Deku, which Uraraka is Deku's love interest, therefore fills that role extremely well. But when we also look at what skills Uraraka has in regard to the harm she can cause, this reveals something far more dangerous. Uraraka's family are full-blown skilled construction professionals owning their own construction business, and that family would have a full-blown understanding of how buildings and other construction projects would be done, which that information would be passed on to the daughter Uraraka. So Uraraka, as she stares at the UA height fences around Deku, would have a deep understanding of what the strengths and weaknesses are, including a full understanding of how to modify them to get any results she wanted. Along with the power to remove gravity from the things she touches, which by construction terms would remove the biggest issue construction projects have, the weight of everything they use to build something. For example, Uraraka by herself would be able to lift up a multi-ton pipe and place it into position and then know how to secure it properly without any assistance. Uraraka would even know where to find the proper tools as she takes things from her family's fully stocked construction business, without leaving a record behind, as she is the trusted, skilled in construction daughter, which since those tools would have been bought already for legitimate purposes, there would not be a suspicious paper trail of receipts either. And also there is resources in UA for constructing all sorts of hero gear that could be accessed by Uraraka due to her secret agent status. Uraraka's abilities were so good, she could single-handedly complete a complex large construction project on her own if you gave her enough time. But that time would be the main issue, as Deku's little Quirk would scan Uraraka as she modifies UA High, and there was a major investigation to track every one of the students for the UA Traitor. So without any shadow of doubt, if Uraraka did it, they eventually detain her and accuse her of being the UA Traitor. Which again, Uraraka's unique resources would have handled that problem, as at that point, Uraraka would utilize a top-tier security clearance and rank of Toga, her direct leadership, to authorize the modifications to UA High. As Toga is responsible for countless high-end infiltrations of powerful enemy forces, so they gave her the top authority levels to make sure Toga never is forced to reveal their unprecedented ace in a hole who can truly replace someone with no chance they can figure it out. While their enemies think with the powers they have, there'll be no chance the double agent could get in. Have UA High and other law enforcement, after a while of detaining Uraraka in secret, verify her authority to do what she was doing, then release Uraraka, letting her continue the modifications to UA High. They probably even apologize and salute her, demonstrating Uraraka's authority over them, which Uraraka simply says something in regard to, "It's okay, you were just doing your job," then assist them on erasing any evidence of the investigation on Uraraka, which ex-Riddle Quirk would scan the whole time and reach an incorrect conclusion that whatever Uraraka was doing was legitimate and should not be messed with. With this data, it's clear Uraraka was a perfect person to sabotage UA High. Having all the security, if it detects anything, would be completely unable to do anything or even get suspicious of anything the skill at sabotaging Uraraka does. Since Toga already established an adversarial relationship between Uraraka and UA High, as Toga specifically before told Uraraka to try to get Deku to lose at the licensing exam, since Uraraka went for it, we can see she'd be okay with further adversarial type of actions, having her willing to build something to go against what UA High wants. Therefore, Uraraka should easily be able to make UA High under those ideal conditions a death trap for Deku, while Uraraka thinks these breaches and defenses are meant to help, send in resources or build defenses for UA High and Deku. As we look for Future Deku's view on this matter, we find the music strongly supports this. When Toga started this, after initially attacking Deku, the music was so dark that I can best describe it as they even removed the music, having just dark tones being played, showing Future Deku's view of this had him conclude this will be catastrophic, and clearly this type of threat, inevitable and result, would be catastrophic. But for now, the sabotage is in a state the paperwork just got approved, and the construction hasn't even started yet, nor anything for the construction projects have been brought in to UA High at this point in time. So we'll have to wait to see how this plays out in the future. But it's clear, eventually the Revolutionaries will be using Uraraka to make UA High a death trap for Deku. There are many powerful restrictions on how this could play out. This will be catastrophic for Deku is a set rule, which may at first seem to be indicating a direct battle with the Revolutionaries within UA High. But that would conflict with Uraraka will have a bright future as a secret agent, as clearly any direct attack that can be considered catastrophic would be found to have gone through Uraraka's construction projects, which would lead to Uraraka getting fired from being a secret agent, maybe even outright jailed, also could have Uraraka lose her hero career. And if Uraraka avoided being found involved, this would leave her with such a guilty conscience she probably can't handle, leading to some, if not all, of the other three consequences. So the true outcome should avoid major conflict, but at the same time will be catastrophic for Deku. Which means a true outcome should be very similar to the list of non-blood-soaked possibilities. The most devastating to Deku I found was that a fatal obstacle that knows all of Deku's true abilities and fully planned for it got between Deku and his main resources from UA High, which that place has an army of superpowered students, every single resource imaginable, and fortress defenses protecting Deku from the outside threats, which separating Deku from there would successfully meet the criteria for it being catastrophic to Deku, which since Deku's original quirk has been known in the past to mentally manipulate Deku to avoid threats he would get killed by, and also our need to find a result that avoids strong direct conflict to not conflict with Uraraka's bright path forward as a secret agent hero, I would assume a tactical retreat would be the answer, as Deku's original quirk probably knows it wouldn't last much time at all if it engaged, attempted to create an investigation, or in any way get close to such a well-prepared threat. And the social phobia well known to the Revolutionaries' weakness would be exploited heavily, which is Deku's original quirk won't tell Deku and his allies directly anything as it is obsessed with avoiding being detected. So any attempts by Deku's original quirk to alert UA High to the threat would be unlikely to succeed in a timely fashion, as the Revolutionaries would be prepared. Having this separation from those resources would probably occur for a long time, as Deku's original quirk would be blocked from alerting UA High to the threat. That probably would have Deku's original quirk mentally manipulate Deku to head away from UA High to a significant extent, with a mentally manipulated ideal forced into Deku's mind to have him decide to leave the resources behind, which would be a catastrophic loss of resources, having Deku lose most of his options to fight in the war, leading to major amounts of battle losses, and plenty of other disruptions creating major consequences. Which would also meet the requirement of Uraraka avoiding the consequences, and be a hidden problem without any bloodshed, with no guarantee the ones handling Uraraka would ever notice, or even Uraraka herself, as Deku just seems to have left the resources behind on his own. And be in line with the known tactics of the Revolutionaries, chipping away significantly at the ones wielding the god-level powers, to eventually later on finish them off, once they can corner them. So we will have to keep an eye out for this event happening by seeing when Deku gets any ideal in his head that he acted on that made him isolate himself significantly from UA High resources in the future, which should be at some point in the far future, as this making UA High into a death trap for Deku has just begun, and with the sheer amount of things that would need to be modified in that high quality fortress UA High to breach its security, is going to take a long time to do. Especially with how there's just one construction worker that needs to still go to class as a full-time student and get good grades. and clearly constantly spending all her free time on it would get plenty of needed to have been avoided scrutiny from the students in UA High. So it'd be a slow project, but the Traitor Uraraka will have all the time in the world to get it done. We've seen this behavior of moving Deku unknowingly out of danger in the summer training camp attack, in which Judo All For One knew if this mission went just how the others went for Shigaraki in the eyes of the public, which was Shigaraki forces being devastated while he failed every objective, this happening at the summer training camp when Shigaraki had top-tier villains from top-tier villain organizations would lead to Shigaraki's reputation being unrecoverable. So when Shigaraki was on the verge of failure yet again with Deku and a group of heroes escorting Bakugo to safety, Deku's original Quirk scanning spotted the group of hidden Nomus approaching who had the orders to take Bakugo back from them, which Deku's original Quirk determined engaging them would not go well, so instead attempted to use Miscompress, the other hidden villain, to as quick as possible use his incredible capturing power to take Bakugo away from them. While Deku the entire time and for a long time after had no idea this occurred. Now to look for who at this point is controlling Uraraka. By the evidence I've seen, it is overwhelming that all of this was due to Ragdoll the Wild Wild Pussycats. And Ragdoll looks to have probably not even needed assistance from any other revolutionary. First evidence is the tactics used are aligned with how Ragdoll has attacked in the past. She doesn't want anyone to catch on, so she manipulates people to unknowingly do everything that she wants them to do. Which Ragdoll used her scanning, investigation, master level authority, and trust to scout out victims without them realizing it to find out how to make them do what she wants. Which clearly Toga and Uraraka are facing this type of manipulative threat. The second point is that Toga's operation is heavily classified, therefore only the ones with a need to know would be able to communicate with Toga, which Ragdoll led the entire operation in a summer training camp, which required direct communication with the double agents to have the League of Villains attack when all the heroes were in possession. Which since the heroes were moving around the entire time, that window of opportunity was very small. So direct coordination was needed to force the villains to attack at the right time to have them fall into the trap. Plus direct manipulation of the villain attack force to be deployed in the correct way for the trap to be effective. With how classified Toga is, they probably only have the bare minimum people talk to Toga to pull this off. So that means it'd only be Ragdoll as she was responsible for basically everything there, and had the clearance to do Ragdoll's job was to hunt down All For One. While everyone else would there just to be unknowingly used as pawns, or directly assist Ragdoll while being told also to not ask any questions. To pull this attack off at the licensing exam, all that was needed was the already existing connection between Ragdoll and Toga. Almost no one else could have gotten it. So that makes Ragdoll basically the only one that had a chance to have what was needed from the side of the Revolutionaries. Therefore Ragdoll has to be responsible. It is currently in this chronological analysis unclear how Ragdoll is doing, with willingly giving her Quirk to All For One to poison his mind. But Ragdoll didn't need her scanning Quirk at that point in time, as Ragdoll already got to Toga prior to that incident and had the top authority needed to give Toga's group orders. Despite the issue of having to give her power away, we probably should assume Ragdoll is going to be a major threat in the future, as a scanning Quirk wielder whose Quirk is directly blood related to Deku's powerful scanning Quirk, who also had all the time to plan for every outcome, while planning for a power to be given to All For One from the very start. This type of person should have an effective plan, so we should just assume Ragdoll has a plan for how things are now, and that Ragdoll will secretly get into a powerful position in the future. We probably will also find more unsuspecting pawns of Ragdoll, hidden throughout the story of My Hero Academia. But just as long as Ragdoll can hide a true monstrous self from everyone else. I think it is safe to say that with Ragdoll intentionally giving her Quirk to All For One, and then her living Quirk used All For One to protect Ragdoll, by controlling him partially during the Camino Ward incident, Ragdoll will probably be able to access her Quirk in some way in the future, and there is no real barrier between the action of taking her Quirk back undetected, as Ragdoll would lead the security of the jail to contain her Quirk that could scan for weaknesses All For One can use to escape, so obviously would put Ragdoll heavily in charge, and only needed what seems to be a few seconds of physical contact with All For One to get a quirk back, which would also make undetectable changes. Due to the person she's related to, Deku's original quirk has been shown to look indistinguishable from what normally is there, so completely undetectable unless you observe them using it. We probably only get a report of suspicious friendly behavior between Ragdoll and All For One, as the only evidence Ragdoll got her quirk back, as Ragdoll will try to hide the coincidences that her scanning quirk search creates. For the victories that Ragdoll had with taking down All Might and All For One to be maintained, she just needs to walk away and keep her head down. Therefore, Ragdoll being willing to make this move is an extreme act, as it gave the chance for All For One to catch on to the fact he needs medical attention, due to Ragdoll risk bringing attention to herself. And with how important, complex, and surveilled the situation that Ragdoll is messing with is, Ragdoll must have some sort of hidden advantage that allows her to keep track of everything around her, or she wouldn't have dared to do what she is currently doing. Since Ragdoll's scanning quirk would be the only thing she can get to that could have given her the confidence to do it, especially with being so easy to get back, Ragdoll's actions strongly indicate she has her quirk back already, probably within days of losing it when they were trying to set up the jail around All For One, which would have had the most opportunities due to Ragdoll required heavy level of involvement, with things being constantly moved around to contain All For One that is a scanning quirk of Ragdoll's, which since they only needed a few seconds of contact, we can basically assume it happened, but since Ragdoll's quirk is a poisonous quirk used to contain All For One, but at the same time it probably has left All For One already, this strongly indicates there is far more to the story of Ragdoll than we've seen so far. Now I do want to point out I clearly do not stand by my videos that are not part of my Scanning Quirk series. They all have guesswork, and though they were all on the right track, all eventually fell victim to not going far enough or eventually veering off track. But the Scanning Quirk series is far more precise, as it is strictly chronological and each small part of the time analyzed is done through a detailed deep dive. Therefore, it doesn't give much room for error, though of course there can be, which this accuracy will come at a cost of not being able to deliver the information in a timely fashion for questions that you have of the future events. But for Ragdoll, we can now get the correct understanding of her true motives. As with this new information, we do have enough data to now understand what Ragdoll did to All For One to defeat him. We can do this through the known symptoms that we have gotten by analyzing Ragdoll's blood relative, Deku, which will lead us to understanding the reason behind the Revolutionaries' behavior. Since Ragdoll already has her quirk back, while at the same time around this event, we clearly see All For One showing clear signs of infection by his constant smiling, which is a smiling side effect that Ragdoll and Deku suffers from. This means there was permanent damage from this poisonous quirk entering All For One that wasn't able to be removed when All For One gave Ragdoll her quirk back. Since the smiling side effect comes from the multi-personality part of this quirk that splits the brain into two separate individuals, All For One at this point must be heavily mentally damaged, especially since this is Ragdoll's form of the mind split that had given most of the brain parts to the quirk instead of the user, which gave Ragdoll that constant smile. These problems would be far more severe than what we have been observing in Deku, as Deku gets most of his brain parts while his quirk gets a small amount, which had Deku forced to smile only when his quirk was under extreme use. We can easily see the drastic mental damage through All For One's actions soon after his infection besides a smile. Without All For One decided to kill an unimaginable amount of people, destroying the section of the city of Camino Ward. Instead of doing the simple option, just teleport everyone away, including Bakugo, the capture target, while maybe just a few attacks to destroy the evidence in the building that was clearly just going to be taken by the heroes anyway. Which, the decisions All For One made had caused massive reputation damage when All For One was trying to make themselves look like the good guys. Also, the heroes had completely expected that peaceful option. but instead were horrified at the unexpected bloody outcome that left countless innocents dead. The heroes even stated several times that wasn't supposed to happen according to what they knew about All for One, showing that something drastic had changed, which was all due to Ragdoll's poisonous quirk. Which in less than 24 hours of infection, the problems would be effectively hidden for a long time, as the gel was a perfect place to keep All for One from noticing the problems, due to they didn't allow All for One to make decisions that would make his mental problems obvious, which allowed Ragdoll plenty of time to store All for One safely without any chance anyone would catch on as Ragdoll plans out her next move. This type of poisonous quirk issue is an obvious problem facing stockpiling quirks such as All for One and One for All. We ironically seen that the first villain Deku faced was one such poisonous quirk wielder, as a sludge villain would have obviously been a fatal quirk for any stockpiling quirk, due to drastic changes making the body a liquid that can be stored in a soda bottle. Though these stockpiling quirks clearly have a high resistance to quirks that would be considered disruptive, due to they are surviving such drastic changes all the time, there is no perfect immunity, and some quirks will always have to just be avoided, while at the same time the danger from those quirks doesn't have to be obvious. Ragdoll, despite her mental disruption, was an extremely successful and highly productive member of society, while also showing no physical abnormalities, which would easily give a false sense of security when trying to take Ragdoll's quirk, especially since Ragdoll's quirk is unable to be detected by any means except witnessing Ragdoll using it. Therefore, it made the poisonous side of it unable to be detected by All for One, with the only warning sign was that Ragdoll's mental state seemed to be off. Now, since we know what the intended damage was, by delivering a secretly poisonous quirk that would leave permanent damage, even when removed from the stockpiling quirks, we are now going to look for the details on how this poisonous quirk works. As with how the related One for All uses DNA in the process, and with how the body needs to be coded to not resist the changes as well, it is clear DNA is heavily used in this bloodline of stockpiling quirks. Which, since DNA is the building blocks of life, that is what the quirk All for One uses to determine what it should do. The sheer amount of quality data that is in DNA would explain why All for One can change a person that had a lifelong quirk into a quirkless person. Due to the DNA would tell All for One what normal is. But due to Deku's original quirk brain split creating two separate entities is indistinguishable from what normally is there compared to quirkless people, this would make that change indistinguishable compared to what DNA normally makes. And also, if we look at how human brains function in regard to how malleable it is, the increase in intelligence comes from the synapses, prunings, or constant rearrangement. Brains have been shown to be able to heavily reorganize itself when faced with damage, even stabilizing into a new form despite being able to go back to the way it was prior to repairing itself, after trauma occurs. Ragdoll's quirk just forced it into an unusual, but by DNA very white standards, acceptable form. Since it would be physiologically considered normal, the changes from the instructions from DNA would have a high chance of not being able to change what already is considered normal. We can also see the way the quirk entered All for One and how it left would heavily support the poisonous part coming in but not being able to leave. When it was transferred in, it was under ideal conditions. One quirk was inside the original wielder, nothing blocking the view, so able to latch onto even the most obscure details. Plus being in a facility that contains nomus, that are people who receive many quirks from All for One, so that facility would probably be able to assist in this process, and all the time needed to do the process. But when All for One tried to send it back to Ragdoll, All for One had well over 10 other quirks in him that would probably disrupt the view of the singular quirk DNA. Ragdoll's body also has a high chance to retain her mental changes due to by DNA standards the multi-personality was in normal range. Having the requested changes to see an already what appears there alteration in both individuals so it would probably assume since both have it, this was normal. Therefore, no reason to change it. The facility environment was less than ideal, as they tried to prevent any chance of such interactions. Therefore, probably had to rush the process within a few seconds instead of the 24 hours it had for receiving Ragdoll's quirk. Hard to tell which one or if all contributed to this, but that is enough to explain how it got in without issues but couldn't be removed properly. Which would clearly, if left untreated, have All For One eventually lose, no matter how much he wins, as he can't rule the Empire. He wants a centralized power to himself with half a brain. This makes it that Ragdoll's victory makes it no matter how much All For One wins. All For One can even have the hero side completely surrender to him. His victory would inevitably unravel as he can't manage him properly, leading to his centralized authority in his empire crashing down, as his problems has everyone rebel against him. With a mentally disrupted ruler, unable to make the decisions needed to put down the rebellion, or to appease the masses. Now for Deku, this is not severe, as Deku's ambitions are far lower than All For One's, therefore far easier to manage. Deku just wants to be a hero. And also Deku has most of the brain parts, so is far less mentally disrupted. Despite the many issues, including with Deku's original quirk forcefully taking control of Deku, making him go too far randomly, which would have been devastating reputation-wise to anyone trying to be the symbol of peace. That may not be a long-term problem, and society has not attempted treatment yet. So we don't have any way to know how much of Deku's issues can be fixed. Deku may be able to be a proper hero, but his quirk freezing weakness that can get Deku killed is preventing the treatment for now, as they decide to hide the weakness by hiding the existence of Deku's original quirk. Which a freezing weakness is that his quirk, when it needs to scrap a plan and immediately replace it, will be stuck doing what it was previously doing for a short few seconds period of time, allowing a short window to hit Deku hard without him able to even address it. But that won't really deter the Revolutionaries, as they just want the one-for-all power gone, so that society wouldn't be suppressed, while not able to fight back against the ones in charge. Which the ones in charge were clearly not caring about the public's growing discontent because of that power that the Revolutionaries want to destroy. As they'll always win in the end, they don't need to care, so they didn't. Looking at the story with this new information, the Revolutionaries may have already won, as I don't see anything that could force the brain to reorganize itself to a normal form. So treatment may be completely impossible, which would mean the entire main story of My Academia may have concluded within the 3rd season, despite with us still having at least 5 seasons to go. With now the rest of the story is just a battle for smaller victories. Ragdoll probably wants this fledgling species of scanning quirk wielders to be able to continue, so will probably safeguard the others and ones in the mission so they can be around when another one of those stockpiling quirks appear. And also, Ragdoll wants to put those god-level quirks down instead of letting them tear the world apart as they die a slow death over a long period of time. Which now, since we know the true objective of the Revolutionaries, we can see how far they are willing to go. Basically, everything they do, they have the moral high ground. These misused stockpiling quirks would turn into monsters that would devastate the world as they slowly die. So for the sake of the world, the sooner they can be put down, the better. Endangering and executing a few people would be justifiable if it was done to save millions or even billions in this case. And at no point would it be moral to ever stop striving to put them down in the pursuit of protecting the world from such a dire threat. Plus, they are responsible for making All For One into a monster, so it is their obligation to destroy that monster or die trying. Clearly this is a case of the ends will always justify the means, because there's nothing they could do that'd be even remotely close to the destruction the monsters they are trying to kill would do. A few sacrificed heroes such as Uraraka and Toga, a few massacres such as the Camino Ward incident, to them, it'll be all justified in the pursuit of stopping something far worse. There may have been secret research that led to Ragdoll discovering this type of attack, from what Deku's original quirk did to One For All. As the scanning quirks can't scan those god-level powers, so Ragdoll needed a lot of help to even understand her quirk was poisonous to All For One. And Ragdoll not knowing would explain why Ragdoll didn't do this earlier during her 10 years of being a hero during a long time All For One was around. But such a detailed review upon discovery of Deku's original quirk in the UA Sports Festival, that would of course have blood tests linking Deku and Ragdoll together, as close blood relatives with a confirmed blood-related scanning quirk in Deku. Which at that point, the Pandora's box would be open, allowing those dark truths to come out, seeding chaos into the world. And maybe it even started earlier, as the ideal of poisoning a stockpiling quirk is a pretty obvious strategy when facing All For One. Which they had countless captured test subjects with countless quirks that were touched by All For One's quirk. They can study to learn about poisonous quirks. The one-for-all ability to physically kill All For One was used. If we compare it to letting All For One freak out, lashing out at the world, destroying it as he slowly dies, we can understand if they did have this feature completed, why they chose not to use it as a primary strategy, which since One For All at this point can't be the primary plan anymore, as it was being transferred to Deku, therefore too weakened to be reliably used. This other plan of using poisoned quirks would have been activated, if it was available to them. Either way, that is enough opening to make it realistic for Ragdoll to have gotten the data needed to make this plan. With how a high security clearance and a confirmed blood-related quirk she has, Deku would have Ragdoll told everything about what has happened and discovered. With also allowing Ragdoll to ask her own questions without issues, allowing Ragdoll to choose what to do next, which we know what she chose due to she became a revolutionary, with her seeing a way to destroy the ones she has come to despise ability to control the world. This would make it that there was a significant chance the governments knew Ragdoll's quirk was poisonous, as they would have access to the same research. And I don't see anything that would conflict with a summer training camp being a trap to solely deliver Ragdoll's quirk to All For One, while everything else that was happening in a summer training camp was a diversion to hide the true objective. As all they would need to do is have Ragdoll get captured in the way she chose to do it. Ragdoll obviously manipulated the environment to defend the UA students and cause max damage to the villains, but fell valiantly in battle with her blood covering the ground in her staged fight to the end. Which after such a performance, All For One would have no way to see this was all staged. Then make the fatal mistake of taking her poisonous quirk, as he would consider Ragdoll's quirk top tier, unable to see the danger. It probably is true that what Ragdoll did to give her quirk was sanctioned by the governments with this information, but Ragdoll directly trying to murder Koda does prove Ragdoll is a revolutionary, as there was no excuse for such an action. Ragdoll also throwing her team away also wouldn't be acceptable, as Ragdoll would know she was about to take herself out, and they would follow the last order they received from Ragdoll to the grave. Which this unsanctioned takeover of the Wild Wild Pussycats operation shows Ragdoll is rebelling, but before it had worked with the governments to take down a mutual enemy, prior to fully turning on them. With this, we can figure out that Ragdoll had already approached All For One and convinced him that she is an ally, as All For One gave her quirk back, though the reasons she told him were all convincing lies. This was obviously done through the mental manipulation as seen with All For One protecting Ragdoll extremely early on in the Camino Ward incident. But that mental manipulation is not mind control. As seen with my first video example of this quirk, Deku was able to see that his actions in the first round of obstacle course of the UA Sports Festival were highly suspicious, and the intense music showed the fear of Deku's original quirk, unable to stop Deku from noticing it. Though Deku had eventually assumed he got lucky, this shows that Ragdoll has to put on an act and prove herself to All For One to maintain that loyalty, becoming an active minion that secretly wants to destroy All For One with a long-term plan. It is unclear how Ragdoll will do this, but she has plenty of people that she can turn into sacrificial pawns, and plenty of access to areas where information is stored to give to All For One forces after she scans them, giving them enough to find her valuable, but also at the same time Ragdoll will try not to have her leaks lead to All For One winning, which clearly would be a very defensible spot. You don't send your moles into the front lines, you keep them hidden behind the enemy lines, so Ragdoll will be very hard to catch. So Ragdoll is in a basically perfect spot and will be extraordinarily hard to catch throughout this conflict as long as Ragdoll doesn't make any major mistakes. But Ragdoll also is in extreme danger right now that may bring an early demise, as our hero team, the Wild Wild Pussycats, has more than enough evidence to realize Ragdoll tried to kill them. But for right now, it has not been long enough for Ragdoll's tragic-looking cover story to fail. But it's clear the showdown between Ragdoll and the Wild Wild Pussycats will happen very soon. Ragdoll is very formidable, especially with Scanny Quirk, but also her teammates as well, and their extreme familiarity with Ragdoll's tactics. There is no telling how this will go until it happens, except clearly it should happen in the 4th season, as these mistakes Ragdoll has made shouldn't take that long to figure out. Now with this new information, we can gain a few key points. First, Ragdoll's objective is to keep the poison within inside All For One. But without a quirk inside All For One, this would lead to, if All For One was telling the truth, he plans to give Shigaraki his power and organization. Then this makes it that Ragdoll's quirk poison would not be there for Shigaraki if that stated plan succeeds. Therefore, for Ragdoll to have agreed to take her quirk back, she must know how things will go according to All For One's plans. The mental manipulation would explain how Ragdoll got trusted enough for All For One to divulge such information. But the details are not known as the second round of My Hero Academia has just begun. There are a lot of possibilities. Shigaraki has been failing upward, which All For One and his disgruntled followers that hate Shigaraki has noted. This may indicate a betrayal with All For One attempting to keep the power for himself, therefore his broken mind as well. There may be other quirks we don't know about that may be able to make this poison to be able to be attacked at any stage. Also, One For All has that poison, which All For One is probably wanting to take it from Deku, though this has not been stated yet. We can see All For One would demand for Ragdoll to take her quirk back to be his ace in a hole in that gel, plus other reasons. Which Ragdoll had clearly looked over her options and with knowing the true plans, confidently did it with the intention she will still win in the end, regardless of whatever happens next. Next point for how All For One is utilizing Ragdoll. If we look over the events in Season 3 with All For One being interrogated by All Might, we can see All For One was making fun of All Might, his arch nemesis, not giving him straight answers. Which strongly indicated All For One was cryptically telling them how he beat them so he can make fun of them later on when their plans work. Which now that we know All For One considers Ragdoll his subordinate, we can figure out what he was actually saying as he taunts them. First, All For One did a veiled threat as he insisted to say what he wants at the beginning. First stating how he knows what All Might is doing by stating it. Which the statement is, "I am tracking you, my arch nemesis," and then describes the jail structure which, with Ragdoll inside it, clearly is heavily sabotaged. As Ragdoll would have full trust, full access to help them contain her own quirk, and no one knows that she can scan. Which the translated statement was, he knows what All Might is doing, and can get to him, despite they think All For One can't. Then All For One let All Might speak. All Might said All For One will never escape such a secure jail, which All For One chuckles and says he's going to let them believe the prison is actually working, which it wasn't. All Might then asks All For One what was his plan. Which All For One states even if he tells the truth, All Might wouldn't be able to understand it. Then gave a conflicting answer on how All For One wants to be an all-powerful devil, and then state he wanted an inheritor to be that all-powerful devil. Which conflicts as those are separate people being the same all-powerful devil. Now this may be, as he said, a cryptic statement stating exactly what he's doing using a method that is currently not revealed yet. Or maybe a lie as he didn't state he would answer truthfully. But either way, he didn't state he was going to fulfill his promise to Shigaraki. After that, All For One just bragged about for a long time how he knows how everything is going, which again was due to Ragdoll's leaks. Then All Might confirmed it by his strong emotional reaction, which All For One specifically says, "That's all I needed." So he got something from that reaction from All Might, which is a confirmation of the accuracy of Ragdoll's reports, therefore Ragdoll's loyalty. Which is an expected behavior Ragdoll probably is All For One's only source of outside information. Therefore, there was really no easy way to truly confirm Ragdoll's reports directly, which in this case All For One used All Might to confirm it. Then All Might stated All For One is planning for Shigaraki to be the inheritor of his power, killing Deku and All Might, which again All For One refused to answer by stating perhaps. So once again All For One refused to state he is going to keep his promise to Shigaraki. Then All Might stated he will beat All For One's plans, which this happened until All Might mentioned All For One will watch the situation from his cell for the rest of his days. Which All For One laughed as this conversation confirmed Ragdoll's reports. So he is watching the situation despite the jail was supposed to stop All For One from monitoring the situation. Which irony made All For One laugh. Then the conversation ended. With how All For One was trying to confirm the accuracy of Ragdoll's intel, this does show he is heavily dependent on Ragdoll's report to maintain contact with the outside, as her reports are the only ones he is getting, with nothing to compare it to, which All Might accidentally allowed All For One to verify Ragdoll's intel. So Ragdoll does look to be in a strong position, with All For One dependent on her for now. But this is very early game in round 2 of My Hero Academia, so there is no telling what this will evolve into for now with the chronological data I am using. Now this new information does give us massive breakthrough on the UA Traitor investigation, which has just started. This investigation was started by a reported unspecified suspected betrayal at the summer training camp attack. But at this point, this runs into significant issues. The first potential betrayal was that the secret summer training camp location was leaked to the villains. But as previously mentioned, they knew All For One great power and remnants of the greatest criminal organization would be able to track the movements, which, giving them a skeleton crew of pro heroes while spreading out exhausted, tempting targets, the students of the Class 1A and 1B, it was basically bait with the intention to have the villains find them and get caught in the baited trap. With the catching of All For One in 24 hours and also poisoning his mind were the true objectives. Therefore, there was no betrayal in this regard. The next one was taking out Ragdoll and Pixie Bob, the ones running the counterattack against the villains if they show up. So the defensive plans would unravel without leadership. Which now that it's clear this was staged to trick All For One into taking the poison to Quirk, they needed an excuse for Ragdoll, one of the most powerful scanning Quirk wielders, to be outplayed, or the villains would see the red flags. Now the hero side doesn't know Ragdoll had already admitted she is a traitor, so they'd still be looking for a way to divert suspicion. Which a UA Traitor investigation is the only thing that could, from their view, stop the villains from suspecting Ragdoll. As someone had to be there to defeat Ragdoll, which them scrambling around trying to find this made-up person would convince the villains that this person actually exists. This leaves us with no potential betrayals left. And also, since we found this UA Traitor investigation being critical for the hidden true plan to succeed, this makes it that the UA Traitor investigation is fake, and is meant as a diversion to hide the actual way they attacked All For One. Now there's an important missing component, such as someone who pulled this fake betrayal off would have to either be caught or be expected to make contact with All For One's forces, as they take the role as someone that outplayed one of the greatest manipulators in the world, Ragdoll, who had her entire veteran team, all the time in the world to plan, and a home field advantage. Therefore, they are going to need someone to take the fake UA Traitor role, or Ragdoll's cover story wouldn't work. As someone that powerful that was able to beat Ragdoll would be expected to reach out to All For One to support him further if they're not defeated. But for now, in this chronological analysis, we don't have enough data to pursue that question further, leaving countless potential options they may pursue. Maybe they want to end this quickly, by in a few days present a dead body of someone that reportedly committed suicide when they try to arrest them for the betrayal. Maybe they take advantage of people with revolutionary intent, to unknowingly do the dirty work for them, then unknowingly take the fall. And maybe they train a person to take the role to infiltrate All For One's organization. For now, we can't narrow it down at all due to not enough time has passed to narrow down the possibilities, as the investigation just basically started. but I will be looking for the first sign we can catch the one who will be taking the blame for being the made-up UA Traitor. But we can conclude right now a very dark outcome of this investigation. With Ragdoll's betrayal, All For One will know immediately the truth of the UA Traitor, which we can expect the hero side to be tempted to try to infiltrate using the UA Traitor reputation, which All For One forces will probably welcome them in with open arms to strangle them in private for their intel and resources, as they be top security clearance people coming right into the arms of All For One's forces. So basic gold mine of intel to extract. With also Ragdoll would attack them to gain favor with All For One. How bad it will get for them will probably be dependent on how long they keep this up, and as more time would have more and more people get dragged into this death trap, and also if they by the public view completely get away with it, then no rescue would come in time, as they unknowingly avoided the law enforcement that would have stopped them from making that fatal mistake. But now that we know the relationship between the manipulator and the victims, we can get a clear understanding of the danger to Toga and Uraraka from this. Now first, the future narrations already stated Uraraka will have a bright path forward, so Uraraka will live and she will escape. But for Toga, it is silent on anything about a future. We know that Ragdoll would kill any of her pawns that figured out Ragdoll, or if it would be more convenient if they died due to Ragdoll trying to murder her whole team she's been with for 10 years and Coda, which Toga would clearly have a high chance of figuring out Ragdoll eventually due to her incredible power and resources. And as stated before, Toga is directly communicating with Ragdoll, so we'll know who the manipulator is if she catches on. But also Toga is being used for a long-term plan to sabotage UA High through Uraraka. Therefore Toga has plenty of time to catch on. There is clearly a high probability Ragdoll may attack Toga eventually in the future, which would obviously be a very deadly situation. As a potential outcome with Ragdoll secretly assassinate Toga would align with the stated future outcome Uraraka lives, as he was just a subordinate of Toga, without the clearance to view Ragdoll as anything more than a prominent pro-hero. Therefore if Toga catches on, there'd be a high chance they wouldn't have to kill Uraraka, which aligns with the future narrations received so far. So if Toga ends up dead in the future, I will be looking heavily into the incident for Ragdoll and her Revolutionaries' involvement, and for evidence of Toga investigating prior to any potential untimely demise. So to summarize this new hidden conflict in the show, victims of Ragdoll to survive would have to unknowingly convince Ragdoll to not kill them. This is done by them attempting to complete the task Ragdoll assigns to them without them realizing it until they reach a point where it is impractical for Ragdoll to continue using them as pawns. Then, as long as the release wouldn't endanger Ragdoll, they are released back into their lives. But if they do catch on, they run a high risk that the supernatural monitoring will detect the early stages of them questioning their orders. Which, even if they are trying to directly put Ragdoll's character in question, so going right for the main target trying to end this as quick as possible, it'd be an extremely dangerous, slow process due to Ragdoll's unimaginably high rank and standing, protecting Ragdoll from even being questioned in a timely fashion. Therefore would give Ragdoll plenty of advance notice to set a plan to dispose of them. Though being directly attacked by Ragdoll is technically survivable, it realistically wouldn't be with how much time Ragdoll would have to make her move, and with how the top tier scanning quirk manipulative potential is. These demises can be extremely convoluted, making you not even suspect to a stage, nor having the victim at all realize they are being targeted, as they walk obliviously into a complex, highly detailed trap with a 0% chance of survival. Which, since the Revolutionaries want to not have it tied back to the Revolutionaries, instead be viewed as a non-suspicious event, while this move was triggered by people being suspicious of the scanning quirk, we can assume these assassinations will not be simple, such as a brick falling off a roof, as that would obviously lead to a high suspicion of a scanning quirk, subtle in manipulation, but instead have an overabundance of staged evidence pointing away from the Revolutionaries' involvement, including extraordinarily powerful bait to lure the victim into the trap, to make the investigators believe the victims walked in willingly without manipulation and this all was just a tragic accident. Though the Revolutionaries are in a good position to do a lot of damage, there is one single person that is in a great position to counterattack, and that is Ashido. Ashido's mission is to do her secret agent task without letting a powerful scanning quirk she is constantly around catch on. Therefore, any other scanning quirks around her would be inadvertently pushed back, including enemy ones such as Ragdolls, plus any other form of surveillance. Also, with how much responsibility they gave Ashido, it is clear only ones with a need to know would be told, which at no point Ragdoll had a need to know. This was due to Ragdoll's path to Uraraka was created by Ashido being replaced by Uraraka for the secret mission in the summer training camp attack, which was because of Ashido failing the final exam. So with Ashido not being able to use in the plan that Ragdoll made for the summer training camp attack, due to they plan to reduce the number of students to make the remaining students become more tempting bait. This removed Ashido along with the others that failed the final exam. Therefore, there was no reason for Ragdoll to be told about Ashido at any point. And since Ashido's mission's nature of being as hidden as possible, a scanning quirk would probably have issues locating the unknown to them that exists data. Therefore, Ashido should be able to observe the discrepancies from the Revolutionaries without raising an alarm, along with her hidden leadership, and then blindside the Revolutionaries once they figure out that the Revolutionaries exist, which such a counterattack would be extremely deadly, since everyone already knows about Ashido's absolute dominant power and are all willing to turn their backs to her as they trust her, which was due to Ashido's non-suspicious, extremely charismatic personality that wasn't affected by the secrets she had. Ashido's low grades also probably gave a massive boost to the Revolutionaries' false sense of security, not expecting Ashido to use her powers in complex, ingenious, effective ways, as Ashido coordinated attacks with a hidden, therefore protected command structure. So we can expect when Ashido is finally activated, she will have the ability to easily be devastating to the Revolutionaries, with the only real limit being how far Ashido would be willing to go to complete a mission. As the question is Ashido willing to kill and do other extremely immoral acts are still unanswered. And at this point we have no way to determine the answer from what we've seen from Ashido, as Ashido has effectively hidden her violent side from us. Future Deku will probably not be able to recover most of the evidence on Ashido, due to Ashido's ability to quickly dispose of the evidence, with how her acid attacks would quickly melt away any physical evidence including dead bodies quickly and effectively. So with all this, we can expect it will be difficult to even gauge Ashido's involvement throughout the story. The best we can do for now is anytime Ashido goes on the attack or is around any operation, I'll be scouring the event for signs there was more to it, and especially for signs Ashido attacking the Revolutionaries in areas that seem to have been melted away with acid, which would indicate a disposal of evidence. But for now, the Revolutionaries are too well hidden and events around Alpha 1 have stabilized. Therefore, there is no reason for Ashido to be activated at this point in time. So we can expect it will be much later on when we will see signs of Ashido's activation. With Future Deku admitting what Uraraka did in his retelling of the story, this story would clearly be something that could hurt the secret agents. Now, I did determine with the end of the manga that the future narrations were actually meant to be a public confession letter to expose to the world what actually happened, which would at first look to be Deku not forgiving Uraraka, but that may not be the case, as the damage the public confession letter would do would all be dependent on when Future Deku decides to release it. If it wasn't within a few years of the secret agents graduating from UA High, then that would have destroyed Uraraka along with the rest of the secret agents, which is a bit unlikely as we got a message of Uraraka's bright path forward. But if it was done maybe about 80 years after they graduate UA High, then all of them would have retired by then, therefore not harmed them, as it only stated they worked on classified missions for top secret government operations, which wasn't really the best kept secret, as obviously the general population knew the students going through those super powered high schools would have been scouted for recruitment by the government. And the release at its time could make, instead of this being an attack, it instead be more of an arguable moral move, due to the government decided massive suppression of information was the way to go, so wouldn't mind having the world remember Toga as just a psycho killer while letting the real monsters on the hero side get remembered as good people. Plus the many grieving loved ones that won't get closure, which releasing it after they are all retired or dead by old age would show the mercy to the ones that needed to make their hard decisions. But with me writing this report seeing that Future Deku still after the story end is trying to leak classified information. Which with how bad it went before, I have no faith in Deku's ability to handle this properly. Nor do I trust at all Deku's thought process on how he reaches decisions. These many previous mistakes Deku and his original quirk made should have been obvious to a normal person, but Deku's mind, due to all those mistakes, does not show the capability to handle the situation properly. Which can be expected with Deku's mind being split into two separate people as part of the quirk Deku was born with. Though it is still early on in this chronological analysis series of mine, we should be highly doubtful Deku's original quirk or Deku himself, whoever learned the lesson, for screwing up so bad with classified assignments, as clearly Future Deku still was doing it again, well after the story end. That seems to be all the information stored here, so I'll end my video here. In the previous video, I did state that it was now the responsibility of Deku to make things right, with All Might losing his powers, having Deku becoming the only one-for-all wielder. But that does not mean Deku was not liable for the mistakes he made prior to that. Which this situation was set into motion well before Deku had stepped foot into the disaster. But looking at how Deku handled it, I say he did the best he could have reasonably done in such a bad situation. Deku getting his hero license was really the only critical objective needed to be completed in his situation, while Deku's original quirk got the victory by getting more data from the scans to help piece together there was a revolutionary force hidden in the background. They want Deku dead, with also getting eyes on one of the main plans. Though at this point in time it did not have enough data to understand what it was looking at, but the intel will probably be useful in the future. The situation with Uraraka and Toga who need help really is not something Deku can even address at this point in time, as it's officially hidden by the misguided secret agent student operations, actually keeping it from being addressed and investigated by Deku and his original quirk. Which, with how resilient these hidden attacks are currently, we can expect it will be a while before Deku can counterattack, as clearly things need to change drastically due to, right now, the Revolutionaries are too well hidden. Which, with the investigation into the abnormalities still in its infancy, the needed opportunity won't be presented for a while. Now, next question I should address is, how much should we blame Deku for all this? Clearly Deku didn't intend for any of this to happen, but he did heavily contribute to these events. Deku's responsibility is through the legal category of negligence. Deku had extreme levels of responsibility that made up the foundation of the complicated operations that Deku and his original quirk agreed willingly to become a part of. And they both knew these powerful responsibilities were required to be fulfilled or the operation would start being torn apart. Then they failed miserably at critical parts of the responsibilities. Which they would understand such failures would lead to a high chance of severe unintended consequences. Just because they didn't know specifically what those consequences would be doesn't outweigh their actions, leading to a high chance some sort of devastating chain reaction of unintended consequences could happen. As I stated before multiple times, if Deku and his original quirk simply did not fail at the responsibilities they clearly knew about and understood, then this entire situation Deku was in would not have occurred, and a secret agent student operation would have been just fine. So for the question, do I blame Deku for this? Personally, I do blame him. In the next event, as we move into Season 4, the Battle to Save Eri, that is the event that I truly consider Deku got his act together. I can best describe what I saw was Deku becoming the symbol of peace. Not only that, there were plenty of clear paths created by the event to correct the previous mistakes. Having the ones responsible for determining if Deku should take the role of the symbol of peace saw through Deku's actions they should move forward with it. Deku was even getting on track to get the secret agent student operations to work with him. But at the end, suddenly all that progress was undone by time itself being torn apart. As Deku's original quirk gained access to another person's time power, as Deku's original quirk was able to fully scan whatever that time power revealed. and saw the entire timeline of the Hero Millennium. Basically, it should be considered forbidden power was accessed. From this, Deku's original Quirk started hunting threats that were outside of scanning range, as it knew when and where they will show up. Such as Gentle Criminal and Labrava, even prepping Deku in advance, having him watch the videos to get familiar with them. And also, since Deku's original Quirk can't scan one for all to access its powers, which before needed Deku to be told or reason it out, now that it saw the future, Deku's original Quirk started grabbing the full range of powers from one for all, which again was Deku's original Quirk just grabbing whatever it wants, not caring about it messing with things that should be respected. We can see from this power grab, Deku's original Quirk did reach into One For All. This revealed that One For All is alive. And One For All did address the actions Deku's original Quirk took, using that forbidden power to forcibly unlock powers of One For All. One For All, after the fact, addressed the incident by stating Deku getting One For All pushed One For All past the singularity point, which means Deku's original Quirk pushed the stockpiling Quirk One For All over the edge, with it being added to One For All. Though of course it was far more said, the translation and true ramifications of this, including the significant amount of unintended consequences, we'll have to wait till a later video, as it happened too far ahead in the timeline of this chronological analysis series of mine. The timeline that Deku's original saw had Deku present himself to One For All in his secret operations, and due to he used those powers in that timeline, that meant the ones who are responsible for determining if Deku is worthy decided he was, therefore gave Deku the powers willingly. But now Deku's original Quirk just snatched it from them immediately. Though Deku's survival chances would be higher by accessing the powers early, Deku can never reach a best ending as he does not have the consent of the ones that are responsible for determining if she should be the symbol of peace. And after this event, Deku's original Quirk will continue to sociopathically devour the happy ending timeline that has solved for things of value. This has been a Deer Runner, the runner of Deer. Thanks for watching.